It could be. Good evening, everybody. If I could get your attention, we're going to call the February 2nd, 2023 meeting to order. I would ask everyone to rise for the invocation given by Pastor Steve Kreloff from Lakeside Community Chapel and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Father, we are indeed grateful that we live in such a great country, Lord. Thank you for the freedoms that we enjoy. May we never take these for granted. And we thank you for the government here in Clearwater. We pray for each council individual, each member of the council, that you give them wisdom as they will be faced with decisions tonight. We pray that you give them alertness, help them to be discerning, wise as they weigh all the options. And we indeed ask, Lord, that whatever decisions are made, they would be received and followed through. All of this we pray in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate you coming out tonight and those words. I'd ask that everybody silence their personal electronics. And I'll start with introductions. On my far right is City Manager Jennifer Boyer.
Good evening.
Councilmember Albritton.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor Beckman.
Good evening.
Councilmember Bunker.
Good evening.
Councilmember Teixeira.
Good evening.
And our City Attorney, David Margolis.
Good evening.
Soon to be illustrious. Someday. We're going to start out with a couple presentations. I know there's people that are here for citizens to be heard. We will get to that shortly. If you do want to speak during citizens to be heard or on any other item, if you could grab a comment card and fill that out. We do require that so you can get a little head start. So I'm going to ask Kelly O'Donnell, our Airpark Advisory Board Chair, to come forward for the annual Airpark Advisory Board report. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm in a little bit different attire than I normally am. I'm coaching my daughter's lacrosse practice. Ran a little late, so I had to run right here from that. So we're a little bit late on giving this presentation. We hope to give it last November, but we wanted to be able to have some information to provide to you as far as things we had done with the RFP and talking as a board, you know, what did we want to provide you as any kind of input. So we waited until this meeting to be able to talk to you because we just had our February meeting yesterday and we're able to catch up on things. So we ran into a lot of roadblocks earlier last year due to a lot of transition that was occurring. Our February meeting ended up being canceled because Ed was on his way in, or going out, and then Mike was out for different things, and we had to end up just canceling the meeting because we weren't quite sure where we were going to be going at. And then so since our last time we presented and you had asked about the green print and if we thought we could provide any input on that, I've been trying to get a green print presentation since probably last November. But due to the February meeting being canceled, we pushed it to the May meeting of hoping to get that done and on the agenda. Our May meeting ended up being canceled because we had a vacant board position and we didn't have a quorum. So we had been waiting for our board position to be filled for a year now, and we'll get to some more information on that soon. So in August, we finally did get to have our meeting. We met the new Marine and Aviation Director. He suggested that we should have the board as a whole actually make a motion to get the green print on there, and so we made that motion. We're supposed to have that presentation in November. We were advised of the RFP and that whole process, and after hearing all of that, we requested to be able to review the final applicants to be able to provide any input of what we thought that we would want to put forward as the board. So when we came to the November meeting, we heard that the green print presentation was again postponed. It wasn't ready. And we didn't get to really do too much as far as the RFP and the leaseholder because negotiations were taking a little bit longer than what we anticipated. And we asked for an update on filling the vacant board position because by then it had been almost that whole year, and wanting some process clarification on did it have to be advertised or could someone just apply and request to be on it. And we also wanted to discuss what was the board's actual duties and abilities per historic city ordinances. So we requested that from the city, and we were able to get that and read some of the history of how things had changed with the Airpark Advisory Board and what could be done. So in the midst of all of that, I called a special session so that we could discuss the actual final 3 contestants for the Airpark lease, and we were able to hear the vision that Fly USA had, ask all of our questions as a board that from what we have heard from tenants, neighborhoods, and other concerned people as far as what would be happening, and in addition to giving our input of what our vision as the board was to see the Airpark moving forward with. And ultimately, we voted to move forward with negotiations with Fly USA, but we wanted to make sure that it was highly stated that we wanted to retain that community feel of the Airpark that it has now, and not just through tenants' ideas, but that's what we've heard from the neighborhoods too. They want to be able to be more involved with the Airpark and be able to participate in more activities that go on there. And afterwards, I did attend one of the neighborhood coalition meetings to let them know of the RFP and their opportunity to come here and provide public comment. So after we did all of that and were able to have this special session, once it was determined that the negotiations would move forward with Fly USA, we wanted to be able to, as a board, to discuss the new lease and see, if there was any input that we could provide on it, but we were advised that that was not something that could be done because it was out of process. I guess you guys had to see it first before we could see it. I'm not quite sure all the legal things on that, but we weren't able to review that before you guys were able to, so that's why we're not able to provide any kind of advice as far as a board for that. So moving forward, this has been over a year since our last presentation. Or as a board, still feeling more of a sense of reaction versus being proactive in things, and I feel like our parallel line has gotten a little bit closer, but we still haven't quite intersected with really being able to provide recommendations and advice until almost too late in the process. And I've heard a lot of that from tenants and from neighborhoods, as well as concerns on things like things not being provided in, I guess, plain language. So we've all heard with the whole surplus thing, everybody kind of got up in a tizzy about that because they weren't quite sure what that meant of surplusing the Airpark property. They just saw the notice that went out and not sure full due diligence was taken to really be able to inform everybody what was about or what was going to be happening with that. And we discussed different ways that we could maybe get information about the Airpark out more. And I know there's a Facebook page and there's the city website, but I know as a resident, I just got a bunch of emails and a nice pamphlet about the city's tree inventory program, and I feel like with the Airpark kind of being maybe more something that's on the top of people's radar, that maybe we should be a little bit more proactive in sending out things like that as far as when things are going to be done with the Airpark, just so you can try to halt rumors before they kind of go crazy. And so after reading all of the ordinances, us as the board are hoping to move forward with working more hand in hand with Fly USA as far as making sure that everything under the lease is, being followed and listening to them if they're having issues so that we can serve as a recommending board to be able to come back and talk to you about, here's issues that we're hearing, or here's the great things that we're seeing happen there, and we're happy with it, or here's where we think we can improve on different things. So in the end, we're hoping that this year brings less delays and more proactive opportunities. And that is it.
Any questions for Ms. O'Donnell?
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Kelly, for that presentation. I appreciate it. Are all of your board positions filled right now?
Oh, so that is what I wanted to talk about. Thank you for bringing that up. So you guys voted in a member at your last meeting. He did come to our first board meeting after being elected to tell us that he is now a city employee and he can't be on the board anymore because of a conflict. So now we have a vacancy again after waiting for a year for that vacancy to be filled. So I'm hoping that that can be expedited. And my other question was, we do have an ex officio member who's here in the audience with us, and he has been on the board before he moved a couple 100 feet out of City of Clearwater boundaries. And I'm hoping that we can change the Airpark Board's bylaws to allow our ex officio member to vote, because right now it's in there that they're not allowed to, but we put that in there, I guess the city did, for whatever reason, but they are allowed to under Robert's rules, and we've had to cancel meetings due to not having quorum and, not having enough voting members, so I'm hoping if we could just make that slight change at least while we're waiting for this seat to be filled again, that we wouldn't run into issues of canceling meetings again.
What do you think is a challenge with getting members? Is it the time of the meeting? Is it the number of meetings? Is it the work? What's it?
I think we have people that are interested, but they didn't know if they needed to wait for the official notice that there's a vacancy or if they could just submit an application. That's why we had talked at one of the previous meetings of, did we actually have to have somebody interested waiting for an official announcement saying that there was a position available, or if somebody could just apply, and if they have applied in the past, how long was their application kept on file? I think we got like a year, and after that they'd have to reapply again. So that has, learning that process and getting some more details on that has helped.
Okay. And then in my conversations with Mr. Gandy about, you stated highly, you voted to go with Fly USA, which is who we went with, and you said you highly stated to retain the community feel of the Airpark and for residents to be able to participate in more activities that go on there. I just wanted a better idea of can you describe a community feel and activities that you're envisioning as the Airpark Advisory Board going on there?
So right now, and I'm sure you guys have all been there at some point, it has the little back porch that you can just go in, and the door, they watch you go back there, they see that you're going and sitting on the back porch, but there's not all this security, like as far as we need to see a badge before you'd be allowed out the door. And with the neighborhood days, like bringing those back again, and I know because of COVID they haven't quite gone on, but the neighborhoods have also made recommendations that moving forward with the new FBO, that it does have something like an observation deck or some sort of little restaurant in there that they feel that they could participate, I guess, in something more. Because, they're welcome to come now, but I think if they're not actual pilots or having anything to do with aviation, they may not quite feel that they can go there.
Okay. Because in my conversations with Mr. Gandy, it was, part of our conversation was about safety, about people running around, or it is, an air park. But if there's an observation deck that can be improved and utilized, that would be okay. That would qualify as being friendly for the community to have an observation area.
We had spoke with Fly USA because I guess one of the renderings for the FBO is a 2-story building, so you could put an outside deck on the 2nd story if the restaurant's there, and then people could just sit outside and eat, and then they're still kind of contained because they're up on that deck.
And who's your staff liaison for your board?
Gandy.
It's Mr. Gandy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe we had 3 applicants last time for the
Yes,
Airpark, so it should not be an
So
issue.
we already have applicants for the new, or the vacancy again, and had a new application. One of the issues that we ran into is just people were not applying. And there is no limit. You don't have to wait for an invitation or wait for a vacancy. I keep the applications active for each board. And so, yes, if the application is beyond a year, we reach out to them. We don't throw out the applications. We do reach out and see if there's still an interest in the board. So if there is a vacancy, because sometimes an individual has to wait 2 or 3 years or a full term in order to apply. So we do contact them.
So we'll be seeing that at the 2nd February meeting.
Already starting on the agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you for that report. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to a great year for the board.
We do too.
I would ask if there are any amendments for the minutes of the January 12th, 2023 meeting.
Move to approve the minutes?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Ask for any amendments to the minutes of the January 5th special city council meeting.
I absolutely call for that. My hand's up. I would like the chance to speak. I'm a registered voter in this county. This is my precinct.
Sir, this is approval of the minutes.
It doesn't matter. It's just something that needs to be said.
You're going to have citizens to be heard, and you can speak to any item next.
Move,
Do I have a
motion to approve the minutes of January 5th?
second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. So tonight, I think there's a bunch of folks in the audience that would like to talk about trees. Is that right? And then a couple people that might want to talk about recycling. So if either of those issues or any other issue you would like to discuss that is not on the agenda, this is your time. So I'm going to open it up to citizens to be heard. I ask that you fill out a comment card, if you would state your name for the record, and I respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Jennifer, grab a tissue. Got a sneeze. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Kelly. I live at 1451 Sandy Lane, and I would like to talk about replanting trees. In 1961, Water Tower was built on the Kings Highway Rec Center land. Notice all the trees. Lots and lots of trees. I moved to Clearwater, next to the water tower, in 1985, and lived in the same house for most of those years. This is the City Park in 1985. Here's the Google Street View of the same City Park in February 2019, 34 years later. See the difference? Every few years, more and more trees are cut down here, with none planted to take their place. 2 at a time, 3 at a time, every year or 2. This is a heart-stopping sight for me, this truck. 2 more trees were cut down last year. This is a dry retention pond, which has been very helpful because when I first moved, the street was flooded. Every year it flooded. So it's obviously trees can't be planted on this dry retention pond, but some parks need their trees back. The top 10 reasons to plant trees, as I'm sure you know, trees provide oxygen that we need to breathe. Trees clean the air. Trees provide shade and cool down homes, streets, and cities up to 10 degrees. Trees filter water and slow storm surge and flooding. Trees prevent soil erosion. Trees increase property values. Trees can save homeowners up to 25% on energy bills. Trees help buffer noise pollution. Trees provide homes to wildlife, and trees are beautiful and boost our mental and physical health, especially helpful in city council meetings. So I speak for the trees. That's
Thank
the
you,
end.
Ms. Kelly.
wish I could speak for the trees. Hi, good evening. My name is Nita Cole, and I represent the Clearwater Community Women's Club. And just like last year, I'm back again this year because our signature event, working for survivors of human trafficking, is up again. Just like what I saw for the city of Clearwater. I'll be there next Thursday night, a week from tonight, at Baycare Stadium. So I'm here to talk about the Champa Bay Elimination Dinner. And I think Tammy may have already shared some items with you, but if she didn't, I still have more. But our Champa Bay Elimination Dinner is to raise money for funds for survivors of human trafficking in Pinellas County for safe housing and programs. They need as much support as possible. Our event, the Champa Bay Elimination Dinner, in its first run last year, raised about $50,000. No one said we could do it, and we did. So we're up and running again. We will be there March the 4th from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Economy Center in Dunedin, Florida. It is a dress casual, your favorite sports team event. That's why it says calling all sports fans. We do give away grand prizes. People don't understand an elimination dinner is similar to taking things away. When we were eliminated from the playoffs here, the Buccaneers, you could be eliminated at the event and not win a grand prize. We have grand prizes from the Buccaneers, the Rays, the Lightning, and so on. So please join us. We'd like to invite the entire community, I'm getting nervous, for the Champa Bay Elimination Dinner on March the 4th. Thank you. We hope to see you there, like Kathleen's going to be there. Come join her.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
My name is Nick Fritch. I'm a former 27-year resident of the city, and my wife and I consider this city our second home. I eagerly express my gratitude to Mayor Hibbard, council members Tessera and Beckman for your courage, your integrity, true strength of conviction in firing the former city manager. I implore the city voters to express their own thank you as well in their own way. You endured a hailstorm of public opinion and false and petty comments, and even worse, innuendos of collusion and violations of Sunshine Law. All of this was inflamed by the media, yet you persisted in doing a job that needed to be done. I quote Mark Twain, "It's never wrong to do the right thing." As city manager, the CEO, and at the top, and therefore charged with the responsibility of providing quality and timely services to residents. One of the issues of this discussion was a huge backlog of sidewalk projects caused by two large departments, engineering and parks. I'll elaborate on this situation with some common sense. I apologize for the repetitive recitation, but I will speak more rapidly. This implies, the situation implies, the supervisors in these two large departments couldn't or wouldn't coach, challenge, or direct their employees to fix this lack of cooperation. On top of that, two departments' directors, super bosses, couldn't, wouldn't coach, challenge, or direct their employees to fix this lack of cooperation. And those two super bosses report to an assistant city manager who couldn't or wouldn't coach, challenge, or direct the two super bosses to fix this lack of cooperation. The past CEO, Mr. Jennings' fix was to add a triple super public works director to fix this lack of cooperation. Is this really good management? Absolutely not. My suggestion is, and one of the council members, Albritton, seemed to think and praised the city manager for doing this fix. Meanwhile, Councilmember Bunker thinks there isn't a problem with the CEO, and his CEO is doing a good job. This should have been a 5-0 vote. My suggestion is you should be more diligent and join your three colleagues. This is a systematic failure across an organization. Thank you, Mayor Hibbard, council members Tessera and Beckman for persisting in doing the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Crutch.
Hello, council members. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get into the speech, I want to say that most of our oxygen actually comes from phytoplankton. Very important to take care of our oceans, not to take away from the trees. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Clearwater, our great nation. Today marks the second day of African American History Month. I wrote this speech to honor and celebrate African Americans' rich traditions and accomplishments for 245 years. African Americans have been a vital part of creating this country. Their contributions to the arts, science, engineering, commerce, and much more have shaped America into the powerful and diverse nation it is today. From the likes of Neil Tyson Degrassi, who has made groundbreaking contributions to the field of astrophysics, to Rosa Parks, who stood up for civil rights and changed the course of history. African Americans have been trailblazers in every area of endeavor. You must remember the contributions of Clarence Thomas, the second African American to serve in the Supreme Court. And Matthew Knowles, Father Beyonce, so we all know, has made significant impact in the music industry, along with the founders of the NAACP, Du Bois and Wells, who fought tirelessly for African American civil rights and helped pave the way for future generations. Let us also remember the founders of BET, Robert L. Johnson and Sheila Johnson, who created a platform for African Americans' voices to be heard nationally, and actually at this point internationally. Here in our beautiful city of Clearwater, we have many heroes of our own who I deeply admire and respect and want to recognize in the speech. Miranda Douglas, a woman who is determined to do good for the community, regardless of the barriers she is confronted with. She's determined, and she has all the makings of becoming a great leader. Reverend Jonathan Way, Sr., a man who I deeply admire and respect, and has dedicated his life to guiding and helping others. I also want to recognize Mohammed, Marilyn, Sandra W. Rooks, Dr. Randolph Lightfoot, and Zeb, and many other individuals. Due to the pressing of time, I cannot name today, but thank you for your service to our community. And of course, Ms. Lois Bell, who I never will forget. They told me to be there and present. I will always be there and present for this incredible community. So I'm going to sum it up really quick. In closing, I want to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the most influential leaders in the civil rights movement, by quoting him tonight. He once said that the time is always right to do what is right. And as we look around us, we can see African Americans have always been doing what is right, fighting for justice and equality, and making this country a better place. But there is still work to be done, and it is us to all come together and stand in solidarity and continue to make this country a place where everyone has equal opportunities to succeed. Thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Leinart.
I'm Glenna Wentworth. I am the president of Morningside Meadows Homeowners Association. Honorable Mayor and council members, this is more about trees. I want to thank you all and Dan Maribel for the information that was given at the working session on Monday on the tree inventory and assessment program. Like many other older neighborhoods in Clearwater, we are characterized by our big, beautiful trees. Unfortunately, there's been a problem for several years with tree removal in Clearwater. A resident at our HOA meeting last night shared his experience 4 years ago when 4 queen palms were removed from the easement in front of his house. Apparently, the crew was in the neighborhood trimming trees, and decided that they decided to remove them. The notification was a knock on his door. He was in Boston at the time. When his neighbor came home that night, he saw the trees were gone, and he texted the owner. Those trees had been maintained by their family. They hired an arborist and had maintained them for 25 years. So he was telling us we needed to really pay attention to this. last night. Thanks to the online map that the city has provided, we were able to look up some of the trees on our, we have over 75 trees in Morningside Meadows that are in the I'm sorry, do I have time?
No, she hasn't started the clock.
Oh, okay, that's what
You're getting overtime.
Wow, okay, I just want to make sure I didn't go over time, and I'm looking. We have over 75 trees in, we have long medians in our neighborhood, and very large trees at our entrances. Counting that, we have about 80 trees just there, not in the easements. And as I looked up the trees, we don't really have much tree loss with dead trees certainly, or what are rated number 1 right now. But trees that are rated number 2 could really be an issue in our neighborhood. It would take out 1/3 of the trees in our median on Harn. It would take out all the trees at the entrance of Meadows. These are all oak trees for the most part. Many of them are live oaks. So going forward, I would recommend a vigorous campaign of messaging from the city as this comes back, this program is reactivated. We would ask also that no tree be removed unless, of course, it's imminently hazardous, until a tree replanting program is approved, budgeted, and in place, so that when trees are to be removed from our neighborhood, we can, we'll know that a replanting, that somebody's going to come in, the city's going to come in and replant those trees very quickly, not years from now, not maybe. The other thing that we would ask is for the HOAs, for the neighborhoods that have HOAs or have spokespersons, that we be contacted, that we be notified when the city is coming to our neighborhood to remove trees, so that we can see the plan for our neighborhood. Trees that are, when you enter our neighborhood, the trees announce our neighborhood for us. Like I said, they characterize our neighborhood. So it's terribly important to us that we know what's coming, and that we can talk about it, or if there's an appeal process, I would speak to that as positive too. But those are our asks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth.
He's going to hook up his phone. We have a few pictures.
Okay.
Do it here?
Just put it down.
Oh, there.
No, the other way,
Okay,
just as you would see it.
I see.
And did you provide a comment card?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Thank you.
I'm Renee Hartunian, and this is my husband, Wayne Hartunian. So we just purchased our first home here in Clearwater 6 months ago, and we've lived here 7 years, though. So one of the beauty about Clearwater is the trees. So we have 5 trees tagged right around our house, and the reason why we bought this house in the first place is because of all the trees and the gorgeousness of our property. This is part of our backyard, as you can see, and what happened is we had moved in, I think it was September of last year, and this was taken down about 3 weeks ago, I think maybe a month ago now. Yeah. So we got a notice on our door from the city, and it was like 48 hours later or 3 days later, O'Neill's Tree Company was knocking on our door saying we're removing this tree. And it's actually 90% on our property, and we did the survey to look, and we were basically communicated we had no choice. They were taking our tree away. And this tree was so big and so beautiful that it covered and gave us all privacy to our backyard and shaded half of our backyard, and it's completely gone now. And yeah, and that's the before and after photo. It totally destroyed the ambience of our backyard. So that's one tree. The next one is in front of our house, and what is it called?
Silk floss.
It's called a silk floss. This was in full bloom when we first moved in, and we literally had 10 people stop by, knock on our door and say, your tree's so beautiful. Can we take pictures of this tree? And that's it right there. It's tagged.
As a number 3.
Well, as a number 3, but I don't even want it to be in question.
We
Now,
don't even want to tag on that tree,
Yeah.
basically.
Unfortunately, we did, per our survey, it's on city property, but it is in our front yard. It's the front of our house. And even though it's on city property, we would like to propose it not go anywhere because it's just unique, it's beautiful, it's not harming anything, as far as we know. I mean, just look at it,
It's not invasive and it's not unhealthy.
Right, we looked it up. It's not invasive, it's not unhealthy, it's not dying, and I see no reason for it to even be thought of to disappear. The next tree is a live oak that's tagged number 2, right there. It's right outside of our property, it's not dead, it's not invasive, and it's tagged a number 2. We don't want to see it go. So that's the whole point. And we have about 3 or 4 or 5. If you go up one more block on Druid, there was a tree that size already taken by our nails also. I don't know if you know of it, but
Our neighborhood is heavily treed, like heavily, all the side streets. And I don't want to one day be driving through Clearwater, a few months from now or next year, and literally 40-50% of the trees are gone.
okay, time's up.
I would actually like to see 10 times the amount of trees.
Thank you, sir.
around here.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Danny Hall. I live at 2575 Elderberry Drive. As an autistic person, this process is incredibly difficult for me, yet here I am due to the lack of action by our city officials. For the record, we have recently sent 2 emails to this council on this issue and met previously with Councilwoman Texera. We have amassed a ridiculously large file on the subject that my husband has. We have lived peacefully in our home for over 20 years until a man named Kudal Jain bought the home behind us at 3277 Beaver Drive almost 3 years ago now and turned it into Party Central as an Airbnb VRBO short-term rental property, which is in direct violation of our municipal code for our area and countryside, which he has been violated for by the code board multiple times. Mr. Jain has lied repeatedly, saying that he only intends the property for long-term rentals, when in fact there have been recurring weekend or even overnight guests at the property and repeated instances of loud and raucous parties until all hours of the night. There have also been guests that play loud music in the afternoons when my child is trying to do his schoolwork and we are trying to work because we work from home. We've called the police, but there's only so much they can do. They show up, they tell them to keep it down. As soon as the police are gone, they crank the music right back up. So when we have tried to peacefully work with this man, he has belittled us in text messages, called us names. He's threatened us with his lawyers, with a lawsuit for impacting his business. We've worked with the system, within the system, for 3 years with the code officers. We've been before the code board multiple times on this issue with no resolution. 3 years my family has been through this. 3 years we have been subjected to these raucous parties that are like Clearwater Beach style in countryside. Okay, why do we have to continually suffer when this man is obviously and repeatedly in violation of our municipal code? So obviously fines, he's got money, are not enough. He shouldn't have the ability to continue to run this business. He's not a good citizen. He is not a good neighbor. So please, I'm begging you for help. I'm begging you as a mother who has autistic children, who's autistic herself. This is cruel. It's cruel to continue to have this party situation. I've met with Texera. Please help us. That's all we're asking for. And as the ecologist who works in this county, the tree situation is abhorrent, and I'm just appalled. And you'll probably be hearing about that from me on this as well. So, thank you.
I did email you this morning at 11:25. I don't know if you got that. We are looking into it. I would ask you one other favor. You also need to write to your state legislators.
Are you serious?
Wow. The state legislature has limited cities on what they can do with vacation by owner properties because they believe that those properties should be able to do with their property what they want. And I said in my email, one of the things is they're imposing upon your rights too and
Yes.
your quality of life. So we understand that. We will work with you on the particular property, but I would also ask you to write to your
Why
legislators.
can't his tax receipt be removed? I mean, seriously, why can't you remove his
I
tax
can't
receipt?
state that now, but we'll work on it with you, Mr. and Ms. Saul,
He has,
okay?
Okay, thank you.
he's at the next code board meeting.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Alicia Valdez. I am the president and CEO of Global Eco Army, Global Eco Navy, Global Eco Air Force, and Global Eco Space Force. The ECO stands for ecological, not economic. A lot of people confuse the two. So Global Eco Army takes care of the environment by land. Global Eco Navy takes care of the environment by sea. Global Eco Air Force takes care of the environment by air. And Global Eco Space Force takes care of the environment in space. We have a lot of junk out there that we need to remove, and there is no such entity to take care of that either. So I was one of these citizens that was just in awe on everything that is happening around me, and I had my hands tied, and I decided, and this is my life calling anyway, so I incorporated a nonprofit, and in one short year, I deployed 1,000 eco-soldiers and eco-marines worldwide in 4 continents to plant 1,000 trees and to remove waste from rivers, beaches, and lakes in Ukraine, in Colombia, in Mexico, and here, actually in Clearwater Beach, we had a cleanup for Angel Day, and I haven't talked openly, publicly, or statewide or nationwide just yet, just in the TV news, but nothing like with the City Council or the City of Tampa. However, the environmental director for the City of Tampa did come to congratulate us because we were doing the cleanup for the Hillsborough River. So, and here we have a nice planting of tree activity for February the 18th from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. where everybody's invited to attend. I would like to reallocate the budget that is going to be spent cutting all these 4,000 trees to actually invest in our Global Eco Army to plant instead those 4,000 trees all around the Clearwater, Tampa Bay area, whatever is needed. As you've heard, everybody is in agreement that we need the trees for many reasons, and I really hope that whoever is pressed against this situation, that they inherited a problem or some type of agreement that we need to cut these trees for no reason because they're healthy truly. So I don't know, maybe the reason is because somebody got a really nice bribe, I will say. I don't know who or for what reason, but that's usually why healthy trees are cut, because somebody is making the money to cut those trees. So that's the only legitimate reason that I see, and whoever is inheriting that law or that procedure has to remember this. One has only a legal but moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws, and that's an unjust law. And that's said by Martin Luther King. So I will appreciate that you guys keep your ethics and morals in check and hopefully listen to the citizens and do what is right to do in your due. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kim Begay, and I'm the conservation advocate and the vice president of Clearwater Audubon Society, and I live in Palm Harbor. I'm just coming here to speak on behalf of what happened with the tree removal in Clearwater, the large camphor trees. So these are just some things that I wanted to mention. The property owner needs to be notified in writing via certified return receipt requested U.S. Postal Service delivery mail. They need to be notified when the tree is marked to be removed, so they have a chance to respond. What happened to Denise and her family should have never happened. This is a travesty, and they need to have new, at least medium-sized trees of their choice replaced in mitigation, because their property value has been greatly reduced by the removal of those trees. Homeowners need to have at least 30 days to contest tree removal to give them time to hire a professional to conduct a survey of the right-of-way and property owner boundaries. Language of the tree ordinance needs to be changed so there are more options for trees categorized as a 0, 1, or 2. The city attorney can change the language of the tree ordinance to allow this, and this needs to be explored ASAP. Not everything regarding trees is about liability. If you're not working with a tree service that examines every single tree for bird nests and wildlife, you need to find another service that is up to date on the latest ISA standards, which would include tree care for birds and wildlife. The tree service company needs to check the entire tree for nests, which includes stick nests and cavity nests. A lot of birds nest in a cavity. They need to use a snake light. A snake light to inspect all cavities, where eastern screech owls, tufted titmice, red-bellied woodpeckers, and other cavity nesting birds nest. This should be common knowledge, not something that is considered special or a special consideration. We have a suspicion that an eastern screech owl was starting to nest in that large camphor tree, and a removal of a tree with an active nest, which is considered any nest that contains eggs or young chicks, is a violation of the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And I could call an FWC officer and I could put a screeching halt to the removal of that tree. City arborists need to know all about tree care for bird standards that have been accepted by the International Society of Arboriculture. Trees are not sterile environments. Birds and wildlife live in them. They have a nesting season, which is usually just one time per year. It is against Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act to cut down a tree with an active nest, and that includes even a mockingbird nest. Even a mourning dove nest is protected by the FMBTA. This should be common knowledge of all city and county arborists. It should not be a special thing. Almost every species of bird is protected by the FMBTA, not just large birds like hawks, ospreys, and doves. Have your arborist completed the Tree Care for Birds training course, or at least watched the videos that have been accepted as best practices by the ISA? If not, they need to, and they can start right away by watching the videos on YouTube. Tree canopies are valuable in mitigation against...
Ma'am, you need to fill out a card to do that.
I filled out a card.
I know that, but your 3 minutes is up.
Oh, okay. Well, I will just finish what I wanted to say in an email, but if I could please hand this to the City Commission.
You can give it to the City Clerk, and she
This
will...
is all about the Tree Care for Bird standards. And,
She'll provide it to all of us.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
please give that to your arborists. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Hibbert and the council members. My name is Mark Birnbaum, talking about Charter School and Nursery Road. First, this is to alert the City Council and the City of Clearwater about the many potential lawsuits that most likely will occur by people being harmed using Nursery Road and driving onto the property of 2433 Nursery Road, resulting in a loss of property and death. The false and misleading data from the traffic impact study and the comments by the sub-consultant speaking had serious warnings that will impact the city and in the future. Thus, we've been put on notice, and you have been put on notice, of the many illegal processes, but proceeding anyway opens the city up to major and costly lawsuits. The illegal wording of the first plat by Ms. Baker of the Planning Department in September of 21 and the DRC of October the 18th misstated the purpose. The wording misled and manipulated the legal jargon and stated a proposed place of worship use and school use, but there was never a school or an existing school or a K through 8. The word used, school use, is not an application for a charter school used for 816 students. Unity Church many years ago remodeled the building for a daycare center and a kindergarten. Documents omitted the purpose of the new owner's request for splitting the property. Residents' opportunities to oppose the charter school were limited except by this open forum of 3 minutes. The first plat was illegally communicated to the homeowners with a technical error by the improper mailing to the residents living within 200 feet of the church property. Only a few homeowners, 4 to 6 of them, received the first plat and the DRC notice, and not the 60 living within the 200 feet of the property per code. This was not a computer glitch, right? But a human error. Provide the documents that gave Galaxy Education Properties Holding, LLC, the new owners for Discovery Academy, their rights to build a charter school. Yes, on January 20th, the city approved the vote to split the 5 acres from the church property. But again, this was an illegal process and not reversed after the error was discovered. Pinellas County changed the property records on February the 22nd. However, the second plat of March the 21st and the DRC of April 1st was not necessary and used the wrong legal owner's name on both plats. And that was an error. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beerbaum.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. About 4 years ago,
If
the
you
City
could just
Council...
state your name for the record, sir.
Your name?
Michael Jansma.
Thank you.
About 4 years ago, the City Council decided to embark on a tree program. You paid perhaps millions of dollars to a third party to survey 22,000 trees. And then millions more were paid to a different party to remove 4,000 trees. Why? You didn't do it for the climate or the wildlife, and certainly didn't do it for the aesthetics of the city. I can only guess that you did it to avoid the liability of a tree falling on a person, or perhaps a tree falling in the roadway and preventing emergency services from reaching a resident in need. That's probably a 1 in a 50-year event. The unintended consequence of your decisions has led to spending that money to eliminate more than 4,000 likely healthy trees, thus removing 20% of the habitat for birds, raccoons, possums, and other animals, and debeautifying the city. Hindsight is 20/20. The third party that you hired to do in the case of the Discovery School being built, you seem to be taking the exact opposite approach. You're running headfirst into lots of liability. The third party you hired to do a traffic study has factually misrepresented the impact of a 300% increase in traffic. This has been pointed out to you ad nauseum by multiple residents. Mathematics cannot predict when a tree will fall, but mathematics does tell us that a 300% increase in traffic will most certainly result in a huge jump in property and bodily harm to residents and students involved in the new flood of traffic. Should the city spend millions of dollars on removing trees to avoid the ultra-rare possibility of a tree falling that may injure someone, that 1 in 50-year event? Or should the city spend their precious time and money preventing a for-profit enterprise from overwhelming city streets and resources to inflict at best daily gridlock, and at worst, very measurable and real harm to residents and students via those traffic accidents? These once-a-week traffic accidents, unlike falling trees, can easily be calculated and predicted with near certainty. But it does not take rocket science. Everyone who looks at this situation objectively cannot fathom why this council once again is taking the word of a third party and ignoring the residents and common sense. In the tree situation, the city gave millions of tax dollars to private third parties only to end up in the very place they were trying to avoid, liability for cutting down trees they had no right to. The Buttacavoli family most certainly will file a rightful lawsuit. I urge you to use this hindsight from the trees and apply common sense to end the tree program entirely. I also ask you to use the same hindsight and common sense to shut down the construction of the school that will most certainly lead to weekly traffic accidents, injury, and possible death of residents and students. Your opportunity to prevent this is now. Common sense dictates you stop fearing the 1 in 50-year events and start paying attention to the weekly traffic nightmares that are coming. Thank you.
Got the worst kind of problem a man can have. Okay, well, the city chart here shows...
You could just state your name for the
I'm
record.
Dalton. The city chart here from the city of Clearwater shows what the hierarchy is here. And for some reason, at the very top are citizens. And all you guys and all your underlings are all our employees. So, I want to know why it is we've had to come here numerous times, and yet you do nothing to rectify the situation that we're in. The situation, as Mr. Birnbaum said, is you've passed a plat division that's illegal. You did it by the incorrect process once. It was done incorrectly. Okay. So you have a process which is in your code, but we don't care about that. When we came here in March, we pointed out the problems with the school. We pointed out problems with the code. Have you looked into that? No.
So what are we to do as citizens? The city of Clearwater has no prescribed way, despite what your staff says about they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I'm going to tell you, I've searched the code, I spoke with the city clerk, email. There is no procedure. You guys are making it up. I want you to stick to the code. That's all we've ever asked. We've never asked for anything more. Now, concerning illegalities, last time I was here, I started to introduce this topic. And this topic is, you are presented with what was reputed to have been a single, simple plat division. No, it wasn't. There were two provisions hidden in this. Apparently you didn't know that, but you passed it and you were duped by your staff. There's no other way to look at it. Because here is a document that I've copied. You have it already in the city records. And basically what it says is that the property can only be used for church uses. Next, we have another document. These are restrictions that go with the land. They're not temporary restrictions. But there is a process on here that specifically says that if they have a public hearing on the amount, it can be, on the account, it can be reversed. Here's another one. This is the restriction that says you cannot divide the property. What part of you do not divide the property don't you understand?
Thank you, Mr. Dalton.
Your whole action was illegal. They don't even have the right to apply for a
Mr.
plat
Dalton,
division.
thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Coleman. I've lived in Clearwater since 1993, and I'm not here to talk about trees. However, I don't know what's going on with the trees. I hope don't come into our backyard and cut down trees. I am here to talk about Bread and Roses. And as you know, that is a women's health care clinic off of 19, directly on 19. And the problem is the safety of the patients that come there. And also, I am an escort, which we help bring in the patients. And also, the safety of the extremists. I'm going to call them extremists now that go there. It's a women's clinic where abortions are performed and other health care means for the patients that come here. And we're concerned about the safety because the quality of the protesters that come now have become extremists. They are no longer just the quiet Catholic group that doesn't say anything. These are people that now go up to the patients and, yeah, they say things, and I know they have the First Amendment rights, whatever, but they're also threatening us as escorts, and they're also threatening the patients with bodily harm they have at times. And they carry backpacks. It's honestly frightening. I'm not frightened because I'm 60 years old. If they want to shoot me, go ahead. But I will be there to protect the patients. And I am scared that the patients are going to be harmed. And we need some kind of ordinance, something done for the safety of the patients. And I want to thank Ms. Teixeira, Mr. Bunker, Ms. Beckman for coming out there and seeing what it can be like. And I invite all of you to check it out on a Saturday morning, generally is when the extremists are out there. Some of them have children, and again, it's right on Highland, and there was a time when there was an older gentleman, an extremist, who went out into the road, and I was ready to run out there to get him. Thankfully, he went back, but it's frightening. Somebody is going to get hurt, and you guys have been notified many, many times, and I feel like if there's not any changes, it will be on the city of Clearwater's fault in a way, because you guys do know, And I don't know what all can be done, but something needs to be done. And that's basically it, but I do want to thank the ones that have gone gone, and thank you for me pestering some of you. And I guess that's it. I have 2 seconds, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cole.
I'm Mr. Haluba, and I understand that the recycle debacle will be mentioned under item 10, city manager reports. And I suspect there was not very many people showed up to speak to this because it's not on the agenda, but I will speak to it. Not only should these fees that were wrongfully collected be refunded to the utility customers, but the millions of dollars Mr. Ravens can't accurately account for in a contingency fund, those should be refunded also. It's pretty clear we're being way overcharged for our trash pickup. Now, Ms. Beckman, you want to make housing more affordable. I would put it to you to do it in a small way by cutting out these overcharges from the City of Clearwater Utilities Department that are really being extorted, because if you don't want to pay one, they cut everything off. Many cities have determined that the recycling program is not viable. And clearly, if this presentation that we had at the work session last Monday indicates anything of viability, I didn't see it. The whole program should be shut down and stop charging us for something that doesn't work. Now, I did recently request a list of all employees who served on any board of directors of any charity of a nonprofit that received over $1 from the City of Clearwater. That is what I received. You can read that for yourself. One of those organizations is called Directions for Living, which has had some very oddball things going on financially. This is the Directions for Living board member treasurer. So my question to any of you is, if we are giving money to these nonprofits, but we don't know who's on the board of directors, and they could be city employees, how are we sure the money that we donate is not going from the city to the nonprofit to the treasurer? I don't know. Do you?
Denise Vadakavoli. Good evening, City Council members, and thank you for supporting the pause on the city's tree inventory project. My name is Denise Vadakavoli, and the dramatic change to my yard has brought many of you here tonight. This evening, you will hear the tone of many different voices: fear, anger, confusion, and disappointment. Please understand that these voices are begging for change and they want to be heard. I personally have worked through the stages of these emotions and am looking forward to a path of resolution. You will ultimately decide the future direction of the tree project and live in the city with those decisions. At the last council meeting, Mr. Mirabile presented the intention and the fault of the tree inventory project. He pointed out the significant loss we have faced and the abysmal future of the tagged trees if nothing changes. He also drew attention to the lack of details provided by the survey company eScience and the city's department staffing issues required to support the project needs. In the months ahead, Mr. Mirabile and his colleagues will be working diligently to produce a more viable project design that will protect the city's natural beauty while maintaining its promise to look after its citizens and the city's infrastructure. The current ordinance 3-1201 Section H states that the trees rated a 0, 1, or 2 are required for removal. This action places liability on the city to remove approximately 20% of the trees inventoried. In my front yard alone, I lost 100%. 100% of the natural beauty, 100% of the wildlife connection, 100% shade and comfort, and 100% joy. The language of the ordinance does not give exception to any tree below the average condition. Very few things are perfectly healthy. I'm a pharmacist, I know. I see people all the time in danger. And we can nurse many of these trees back to life with structural support, routine pruning, and life-sustaining nutrition. I am committed to spending my time, my free time that I don't have because I am a professional married to a chef that owns a business in Tampa. I am raising 3 beautiful teens. I have a lot going on in my life. But I'm committed to spending my time researching some of our neighboring cities' tree ordinances for successful ideas to contribute to Mr. Mirabile and his team. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Wayne Martin, and I live at 805 Spencer Avenue, which is 4 houses away from Denise's house. I go for daily walks, and as I come down Spencer and I turn the corner, for years I've enjoyed looking at the beauty of her house and those beautiful camphor trees. And now, when I turn that corner, I mean, it is devastating. And I would say this to the council, if any of you have not been by, the pictures do a disservice to how, for lack of a better word, how ugly the front yard is now. So, having lived in my house for 37 years at that location, we have been through many of the storms with significant wind fields that have hit the county. Years ago, it seemed like every weekend we said, oh, there's another hurricane coming through. And I'd go for my walks, and no harm to her trees. No harm to her trees. And then fast forward to Irma, 75% of the people in the county, approximately, lost residential power. 75% because of the high winds. What happened to the trees at 1600 Magnolia? No damage. And yet, through the program, we come along and say, oh, that's a 2, and we know that it's a 2 and it's got to go. So, I appreciate the fact that there has been some wisdom exercised in that you have stayed the program, at least temporarily, to evaluate what's taking. I thank you for that. I thank you that my wife wrote a letter to some city councilmen, to the acting city manager, and they were very responsive. And we appreciate that. The city's response, we actually had some visits to our personal property because we have a tag tree as well. And so we thank you for the efforts that you're making and the consideration that you're giving. However, I want to bring it to a head because of what's happened to the Bodicavoli property. There needs to be some type of a remedy for that property. It cannot stand the way it is.
No.
I just, 2 times today, or at least this evening, 2 times people have said it's never too late
to do the right thing. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Tricia Kirby. I live 3 houses down from the house in the picture. It's really hard for me to see that picture because I literally want to cry. And I cried the first day when I saw it when I was driving home and they were already cut. And I told them if I had known, I would have chained myself to one of those trees. As a former federal park ranger and former federal forest ranger and also independent contractor for the Environmental Protection Agency for over 20 years, this kind of thing hurts my heart. Really does. And I've spoken with many of you. I know on a deep level that you do care. I know you care. I want to see better from my city. This whole thing made me ashamed to be a Clearwater resident, and that's the first time I have ever felt that way. Okay, the recycling thing, a little bit, but nevertheless. So I called every city in Pinellas County to find their tree policy, and I asked every one of them, do you cut down healthy trees? And you know what they said? No. And then they said, who's cutting healthy trees? And they questioned it, and I felt ashamed of my city. I said, Clearwater. And they said, huh, why? And my question is the same, why? And I said, well, invasive species. And many of the people said, oh, I love camphor trees. I told them it's the camphor trees that got cut down. These were camphor trees. They said, well, you know, Brazilian peppers are a noxious species, but these trees, they probably shouldn't even be on the list. They're not really, maybe they're invasive, but they're not a noxious species. They don't spread like crazy. You don't see camphor trees all over our neighborhood after those have been there for 60 to 80 years. I've lived there for 20 years. So I made a nice little, I'm not even a talented person with this stuff, and I made a nice little Excel spreadsheet with everybody I called, every policy that I talked with. I only missed Kenneth City. Apparently they don't have anybody full-time working in that office. But you are more than welcome to look at the policies and model your new policy after someone else's who's doing the right thing. What they said, do the right thing. So Peter Kageyama wrote a book called For the Love of Cities, and he talks about ways, he's an urban strategist, he talks about ways that cities can be kind and loving towards their community, towards their residents, and they call it love notes. It's an expression of care from a city, it's a gesture from a city to their citizens. And the first one on the list is canopies of trees. Canopies of trees. Clearwater cutting down these trees is sending a hate note to the residents. I hate to say this, but the residents hate this. They hate, I don't want to say they hate you individually, but they hate this. When I drove by, I saw that, and I spoke with the people doing the cutting, and they said it makes them sick too. They said these are healthy trees, they should never be cut down. That's the arborist doing the cutting. That is the people who work for O'Neill saying that. And I'm asking, my big ask to you is completely revamp this program, take the camphors off, keep the trees, please, 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 save 4,000 trees that are on the cutting block right now. I'm counting on you. I believe in you guys.
Keep the healthy trees. Anyone else for citizens to be heard? Last call. Okay. Just a couple things. First of all, the tree program has been completely stopped. It is going to be re-examined, and first of all, we don't want to spend unnecessary money. And as I've told people before, and I've been out to the home and we've talked about, you know, when the time comes and you're ready to do something, that the city, I think, stands ready to help. So anybody who's asking for that, that's already been discussed, not specifics yet, because I don't think you've truly decided what you want yet. But we have completely stopped the program, going to re-examine it. I'm always fine with people having their own opinion, but I do have problems with people having their own facts. And so there is something I'm going to correct, which is we have not spent millions of dollars on a tree inventory. That's bad information. It's $30,000 a year for 5 years. That is a significantly different number, and I have to point out the fact that that is not a fact.
How much does the removals cost?
Sir, you're out of order.
I thought you were chicken. Unbelievable. You won't disclose the millions you spent on removing the tree.
Sir,
But you want to correct my fact on the survey cost?
we'll take a recess. Chief. All right, we will reconvene the city council meeting if I could have everyone's attention. So the other thing I wanted to address was the fact that we are not going to be having a discussion about recycling tonight. We are waiting for some additional information from the county. And something that I don't think fully came out on Monday in the work session is the fact that we did have trucks down that did some of the transport for us to the two recycling contractors that we use, but also the fact that there are literally limitations right now on recycled material that will be accepted by the contractors. So about a year and a half ago, China got out of the recycling business, and since then it has changed it dramatically. Unfortunately, domestically, we do not have the recycling manufacturing plants that China had, and so the amount of recyclables that are being accepted is limited. That is a problem in Pinellas County. We have a waste-to-energy plant that incinerates over 90%, but there is certain materials that cannot be incinerated. Construction materials, white goods, refrigerators and whatnot, dishwashers and things like that. And we have very finite resources within the landfill. So we really want to recycle recyclables because we do not want to be filling the landfill. But also the county's incineration plant is also getting to its limit. And so these are all the different variables that we are dealing with the recycling program. And so we're going to be talking more definitively about it at the second February meeting once we have got some additional information from the county on what their capacity is to accept not only recyclables but also garbage. Did I miss anything, Ms. Boyer?
No.
Because if I did, you just chime in.
No.
Okay. Also, just on boards and money, folks, I know that the trees are an emotional situation. I get it. And I also know that on the recycling issue, it is not our finest moment. That is why we put out a press release and owned the mistake and made people aware of it. And then we are going to, A, fix it. So if you want to recycle now, you put it in the can, it's going to go within the capacity of what's being accepted right now. But I also just want to say, you know, when folks start saying that there's bribes and other things being used, that's not happening in this city. It just isn't. The people up here are honorable. They do a job for very little money and unbelievable numbers of hours, truly. And I know that when people get emotional, they start saying things like that, but I'd be careful. It's one of the problems we have in this country right now. We throw insults and names and allegations. It does not make us better. Somebody said I wasn't proud of Clearwater with the trees. That type of behavior doesn't make me proud of America. If we want to be a better country, we need to temper some of that language. So I would ask if there are any citizens that would like to take any items off the consent agenda or anyone from the council, items 7.1 through 7.11. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve items 7.1 through 7.11.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.1.
Approve the request from the owner of property address 144 Devon Drive, Clearwater, to vacate the east 5-foot right-of-way easement located on Lot 16, Bayside Subdivision, Clearwater Beach Island, according to the map or plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 23, pages 17, Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and passed ordinance 9650-23 on first reading.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tara Kivett, City Engineer.
The purpose of this vacation request is to accommodate driveway and pool renovations. There are no utilities within the easement. Staff has reviewed and supports this request. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Kivett? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.1? Seeing none, Mr. Margolis.
Ordinance number 9650-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating the east 5-foot right-of-way easement located on Lot 16, Bayside Subdivision, Clearwater Beach Island, according to the map or plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 23, page 17 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
A motion?
Move to approve agenda 8.1.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.2.
Approve the request from the owner of property address 1000 Eldorado Avenue, Clearwater, to vacate the platted 5-foot public utility easement.
Thank you again, Tara Kivett, City Engineer. The purpose of this vacation is to allow for installation of fencing. There are no city or private utilities within the easement. Staff have reviewed and have no objections. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Kivett? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.2? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 8.2 and pass ordinance 9651-23 on first reading.
Yeah, Mr. Margolis.
Ordinance number 9651-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating the rear platted 5-foot public utility easement located on Lot 6 in the north 30 feet of Lot 5, Block 69, Mandalay, according to the map or plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 14, pages 32 through 35 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
Do I have a second? Did you second?
No, I did not. Second.
Can I have a second? I have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.3.
Approve the request from the owner of property address 1185 Court Street, Clearwater, to vacate the platted 30-foot public ingress egress easement.
Thank you again, Tara Kivett, City Engineer. The purpose of this vacation is to allow for landscaping and site improvements for a skincare business. You guys had asked that on Monday. There are no city or private utilities within the easement, and city staff have reviewed and have no objections. Any questions?
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.3? Mr. Margolis.
Ordinance number 9652-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating the north 30-foot ingress and egress easement located on Lot 1, Block A, Earl Schreiber Commercial Center, according to the map or plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 74, page 22 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
There's a motion.
Motion to approve agenda item 8.3.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.4.
Provide direction on the proposed third amendment to an existing development agreement between Tri-Prop Clearwater LLC as assigned by Atlantic Properties, Anco Holdings LLC, and Nakana Holdings LLC in the City of Clearwater for the property located at 400 Coronado Drive.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Ellen Crandall with Planning and Development. The item before you is the third amendment to an existing hotel density development agreement. The primary change of this amendment is the addition of 0.183 acres of land to the project area. This acreage comes from the to-be-vacated South Gulfview Boulevard right-of-way. This will allow for more direct pedestrian interaction and integration with Beach Walk. The amendment includes updated legal description and conceptual plans to include this additional acreage. The height of the project and the hotel units remain the same as previously approved, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.4? Seeing none? We don't have an ordinance, so.
Move to approve 8.4.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Crandall. 9.1.
Second reading.
Yes,
This is ordinance number 9642-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, establishing a redevelopment trust fund pursuant to Section 163.387 Florida statutes to provide for the deposit of funds into the trust fund for the North Greenwood Community Redevelopment Area as established by Resolution 23-01. establishing the base year for the community redevelopment area, providing for the funding of the redevelopment trust fund for the community redevelopment area, providing for the appropriation of tax increment revenues of the city and the county to the redevelopment trust fund, providing for the use of such funds by the community redevelopment agency, providing for the duration of the tax increment financing, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, and providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public speak to item 9.1? Yes,
I have a comment.
okay.
A comment was submitted by Kathy Flaherty. I am in full support of the North Greenwood CRA. I hope that the residents, businesses, and property owners receive the blight mitigation benefits that being in a CRA can offer. I think the new CRA director can do a great job if she and the community are properly supported. Getting the right support from the CRA is my only concern. As a business owner and property owner in Eastgate CRA area, a CRA area formed in the downtown Clearwater 20 years ago, I know what it's like to have no improvements or attention to blight while living in a CRA. Frustration is one word to describe it, along with disappointment. My area is finally getting street improvements, but all the other promised CRA-related capital improvements have been marginalized or canceled. Take the current Mercado design compared to the 2017 design and the cancellation of the 10-year plan Stevenson Creek project as examples. Both of these projects are the city's development plan that the CRA is supposed to follow. I'm hoping the new CRA director can revisit these very important projects and get input from the actual community affected. Along with the capital improvement issue, the CRA raises TIF funds throughout downtown area, but those CRA funds have produced little benefit to my community. Most go to the developers or personal businesses. A majority of the funds generated in the Eastgate area have been spent elsewhere. We have received 48 flags announcing an unexpected renaming of my community for $15,000 and some extra policing. The CRA TIF funds generated in the downtown development boards are paid to the DDB, and then the already full-time CRA staff is provided to staff the DDB board. This is so they can promote the 300 and 600 block of Cleveland Street. I hope the CRA staff will be able to staff the existing CRA, staff this DDB, and staff the new North Greenwood CRA. A CRA has great powers to address blight and improve the lives of the residents, but only if the CRA staff and the trustees actually care about blight mitigation. I hope the Greenwood community had a better experience than I and the Eastgate community have had in that this is approved. North Greenwood has great potential, and I also hope this community is supported by the CRA as it should be.
Anyone to speak to this? Just making sure we stay on track? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yes. Move to approve agenda item 9.1.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 9.2.
This is the second reading of ordinance number 9644-23, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending Appendix A, Schedule of Fees, Article 28 of the Code of Ordinances relating to business tax receipt categories, clarifying subcategory number 070.070, includes all seasonal sales, repealing and reserving subcategory numbers 070.080 and 070.090, relating to itinerant merchants and vendors at shows or markets, and providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 9.2? Any questions or comments? Motion?
Move to approve agenda item 9.2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.1.
Approve entering into Phase 2 and a First Amendment of the Professional Services Agreement with the Superlative Group, Inc. of Cleveland, Ohio for sponsorship sales services for the Imagine Clearwater project. Increase purchase order 220000925 from $69,000 to $159,000 for those services, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Cook, Senior Manager of Parks and Recreation. At Monday's work session, we'd asked to approve entering into Phase 2 with the Superlative Group. Phase 1 consisted of identifying sponsorship opportunities and assets within Coachman Park. Phase 2 would be to move into a sales campaign for it. We also added in some amending language that clarifies the scope to be specifically Coachman Park, some modifications to the commission structure, as well as some protections for Ruth Eckerd Hall as the operator. With me today is the founder and CEO of Superlative, Miles Gallagher, if there's any questions from the council that we can help with.
Any questions for staff or Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Gallagher, when you go into a contract like this, and, one of the questions I asked when we started phase one was whether we were obligated to follow through with you on phase two, which was of concern to me. How close do you get on your contracts to your original forecasts?
What we project?
Yeah.
We're pretty good at this, so we get very close.
What's that mean?
Within 10, 15 points. So
Okay.
of the high side. Remember, our interests are aligned, right? If we say it's worth between $1 and $1.50, if we can get you closer to the $1.50, we make more money too. So, and that's why we give a range, right? We look at, there's a certain point we don't want to negotiate below, right? That's why we try to keep those in draft form, because we don't want people to know, oh, the bottom line, they'll take this instead of this.
No, I understand that. But I, still look through the schedule and,
Yeah.
just the things in Coachman Park with the namings and everything else. I mean, I'll be real frank with you. I'm a little bothered by the level. I'm in a business where I give advice. And in our business, you can either receive commissions or you can receive fees. You're getting fees and commissions.
So, but we've lowered our commission rate.
I understand that.
The fee is just to cover some of the overhead costs. So as I explained to Keith, we'll have 3 people working on this, and the 75 doesn't cover their health insurance costs for me. Doesn't. So I'm just asking you to defer some of the costs, and we're willing to lower the commission rate for that.
But your commissions on this, just on the Coachman, on the low end, and I'm not going to go into details on individual items, but if you were on the low end of every single item, the commissions over the life of the terms that you've identified would be $5,268,000 on the low side, and on the high side would be $6,435,000.
Right, and
along with
over
the retainers.
So the retainer is just for the first 12 months, right? So that's for us to cover the cost.
If that's all it takes.
Should be 12 months. So we will essentially work ourselves out of a sales job by selling the inventory. So if we look at that, those commissions, if it's a 25-year naming right, I won't see the end of it. I'm in my 60s, right? So you're looking at being paid out over a term of a quarter of a century on some of those. I mean, somebody might offer a bigger upfront payment. We'll do a net present value at a discount rate. That doesn't happen that often.
So can you talk about, though, individuals that occasionally do step forward and want naming based on a family name or something like that?
Yeah, we just did one at excuse me, I had back surgery, so I'm leaning. I'm not grimacing because I don't like you. So we just did one at Kent State where we sold the name. He thinks I'm grimacing. Where we got a major upfront gift from a family office, and that will be known now henceforth as the Ambassador Crawford School of Business and Entrepreneurship. And he did it for tax reasons. He was in his late 80s. His tax advisor said, just do this. We're fine with that.
So due to a liquidity event, they wanted to offset tax.
Right. They sold the company, and there's only so much you can do for the family. So those are coming, and we're looking at.
But does that naming right expire, or is it in perpetuity?
So we asked for 25 years, and with the upfront payment, he wanted it in perpetuity. And to get $30 million upfront, I'd take that deal all day long, right? So, but sometimes, if we can do it over the 25 years, right? So we did one Interest Bank Arena, the family that runs Interest Bank. So we were there. They cut a 30-year deal, it was 30 years, and the guy's son was there. And he said, I'm not going to renegotiate the renewal. He said, my grandson, who I had breakfast with, he's 3 years old, he'll do the renewal. I said, why? He says, I'm going to be dead. So that's a family office, right, or a family that runs a big bank. So we're going to see some of those, and in some instances, it's better to get an annual payment to offset some operating costs. We see it with parks all the time, where a city will build a park and not have a budget set aside for maintenance of the park and upkeep. So naming rights can offer some of that. Right, an annual payment of, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 covers a lot of maintenance on a facility in a park.
Other questions? Vice Mayor?
I have just some clarifications, because I did, had a meeting with Mr. Margolis today, but on that middle section about Imagine Clearwater assets, you have naming rights to Coachman Park, Lake Nature Area. Just to be clear, we're not considering a name other than Coachman Park to keep the Coachman?
I agree. I think what will happen, though, is we will find, we'll call on hundreds of people, family offices, and companies.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find somebody that doesn't have the budget for naming rights of something at Coachman Park,
Mm-hmm.
but their family, it might lend itself to like a programmatic sponsorship, like youth baseball or youth soccer,
Mm-hmm.
lacrosse or something. And we might come back to the Parks and Rec and say, you know what, that's a pretty live lead. They couldn't hit this number over here, but could you use $100,000 a year for lacrosse or something? It happens in almost every campaign we do, because we don't leave the office without finding out what they can afford. We go on in, we ask for the big number. They usually say, you're crazy, you can't afford that. Well, what could you afford? They give you the low number, and then we just go back to the low number. Do we have anything here? We don't. Keith, what about this? We know this family has, or this company has a budget of $50,000 a year. So why don't you go suck it up and put it into a guy like soccer or something? It happens every time. Don't let them leave without getting an order, right?
I had a question about, I had a tour of the park and the behind-the-scenes venue, the dressing rooms for artists and things. Are you going to consider sponsoring upgrades to the dressing rooms, fancy dressing rooms and things like that?
If that inventory's controlled by the operator, we won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so we also do sponsorship out at Red Rocks. So we're working with liquor brands for the green rooms.
Mhm.
Nobody ever sees except for the ads.
Mhm.
So we have vodka brands all trying to buy those. So that happens, but that's operated by the city and county of Denver, and they said they could accept that. You might not accept that, right? You might say, no, we don't want a liquor brand. You got to tell us.
Would you check out solar panels on buildings could be sponsored by, and we could have a plaque on the building, like the solar panels up here are sponsored by?
Yeah, you know what, sponsorship, that would have to be one that's from the heart, not from valuation standpoint, because sponsorships are generally the demographic of the airpark's going to get a higher demographic, right? Because you're going to have nice acts there. Airports always charge more for advertising than billboards on a freeway, because they have people walking to the airport that either have money because they're in business, or they have money because they're going on vacation. It's called the ABC1 demographic. So we have the value of the demographic, the dwell time, and then, temperature, things like that. Who sees the solar panels? We'd have to look at that.
Well, that's why I'd want a plaque that
Yeah.
says, hey,
So we've lost our impressions because no one can see them.
Mhm.
Right? We don't know who's seeing them,
Mhm.
right? So it could be done. And I'm not going to tell you that we can get you a lot of money for something like that, because I don't think you can, not right now.
Okay. And then I guess I just had a question, and I did talk to Mr. Margolis about this a little bit. We're just agreeing that you're going to go out and market it, now that you've got the list. But, the amphitheater, you've got 100 events, we have a certain parameter at the high value and the lower value, and then the amphitheater for 200 events. These would be paid ticketed events, not community events,
Right.
correct?
And we're going to take it out at the high end of the most events.
Mhm.
So when we do evaluation, look, we have to do a lot of this on projections, right? You wouldn't have built it unless you knew someone was going to come to it.
Yeah.
So we take the high end of the projections. That's what we take it out to market at. And no one's ever said, I want to pay you more money. They always say, I want to pay you less. And that's our negotiating tool. It's okay. It might come down to number of events. We've negotiated sponsors on behalf of sponsors for NFL teams, where when they push back, we just said, okay, Super Bowl win, we'll give you a $5 million bonus.
If I could add just one thing to that too, is we will get to see any collateral that goes out to sponsors before it goes, so we can make sure that's all accurate, bring Ruth Eckert Hall into it so that we're not giving any indication of false.
And that monthly retainer amount is like under $100,000, right, for 12 months or so? And you think you can get it done in 12 months?
I think you can some of it done in 12 months. I think at that point, we go at all risk just on commission. right? There's gonna be some live lead that we're not gonna walk away and say, oh, the retainer's over, we're done. It's gonna be, we're gonna see this to the end.
Yeah.
That happens on almost every one of our accounts.
And then
There's
one,
something we're working on when the retainer ends.
and then one last thing I had, I have this impression of, we sign the contract, and it's like we're in the starting gates of a race, and it's like, okay, who's gonna go out and get because we get to have 3 of them. If we bring in 3, we cut the commission in half.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so, okay, is that how it starts, as soon as the contract is?
No, I mean, what we should do is we should look at the 3, and some of them might be really hot leads, and some might be, one conversation that's not gonna happen. And we'll help you with that. Even if the mayor knew somebody and said, this family wants to buy this, you're gonna need help on the contract with your legal department, because if there's one thing you miss, it could bite you bad over the term. And we've done so many of these things, and that's where we're, the reduced commission.
Thank you.
Other questions? So let me ask you this then. I mean, we have expectations of a certain number of events, and you've got 100 to 200. Certainly, in year 1, we're not going to reach that.
Right.
And we also have certain expectations of the community about how many events, too. But why does it behoove us to start selling it now?
You have the newness of the facility.
I know there's excitement.
It's a huge variable, huge, very important. Because once it gets dusty and it's open for a few years, there's an issue, something's going to come up that hurts the sales process. I mean, in every new facility, we want to hit the ground running on it every time. Even transit, we're doing naming rights to light rail lines and stuff. If it's an extension, we can sell it sooner than if it's a shorter, older line with more traffic. It's the newness.
Now, see, I've experienced people that weren't wild about something up front, but once it was successful, there was more interest.
In my industry, and I'm here to tell you, I respectfully disagree with it. On naming rights for facilities, when we look at stadiums, arenas, public infrastructure.
These are entertainment venues.
Okay.
So, I frankly have mixed feelings about it. I, in some ways, would almost like to do another RFP and see if there's other firms with different structures. I feel somewhat pigeonholed into this, and you very well may be the best one out there. I don't know. The problem is I don't know.
Well, we've been vetted by the Department of Defense. We represent the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, and the U.S. Marine Corps for this very task. So I'm happy to go out to another RFP. I'm sure we'll shine.
Other questions? Comments? Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.1? Come on up. I'd ask, have you filled out a comment card?
No,
You can fill it out after. If you'll state your name for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Callie Milford, and I just, as a business owner, agree with Mayor Hibbard that the commission structure sounds like double dipping. That's all. Just doesn't sound very fair.
We had offered a very small
Well,
for a higher commission.
I need you at the podium. Thank you.
So we had offered a smaller retainer at a higher commission, and, and the Marine Corps pays us 35% with nothing up front. I'd be happy to do that, but you would regret it once the first thing is sold.
No, I'd rather pay you a larger retainer and reduce the commission. If anything, I'd give you $20,000 a month if you're going to do it in a year and reduce the commission. I'm assuming that's not something that's acceptable to you.
We live in an annuity business, right?
I know that.
Yeah. It's like selling insurance. We get paid over the term of the contract.
Vice Mayor?
I think we should go with superlative. They've worked with us from the beginning. We've decided to have them do the inventory and come back with a proposed contract. And now that they have it, and we have it, and they have expertise, and now we're questioning their expertise. And I do think that there's value in getting in on the front end. And if we send out an RFP and have someone else come out, it's just going to delay those names and that revenue. I worry about the impression we have of swinging back and forth. We have somebody, we get the contract, and we, appreciate their expertise, and then it's like, no, I think I want to go out and look some more, or look again. And,
Well, I stated my concerns about that when we signed the original contract for Phase 1. Mr. Margolis and I have talked about that, watched the video again, just to make certain that that was stated, because I was concerned with somebody we had in management previously, that they didn't remember that. And I wanted to remind them of that fact. So,
so you think months ago we should have had an RFP for the naming rights contract?
I'm very concerned when you do an RFP for a Phase 1, and then you are kind of locked in, not contractually, but because you started Phase 1, you're locked in with Phase 2. I just am always very careful about that. So, I don't know where the support level is on this. I will tell you this, from my perspective, I'm going to ask that staff be watching this very closely.
Sure.
And if you're not
I'm here because Pat had a death in the family. I live in Naples, so for me, it's just a couple-hour drive. It was
and I
easy.
appreciate you being here. But I also want y'all to meet these expectations. So, and if we aren't, then I'm going to be ready to cut you loose.
Yeah, we could terminate for convenience, on any of our contracts,
I just want to be upfront about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, and isn't it, we have this list of possible, assets that could be named. If they negotiate a contract and we don't like it, we don't have to accept it.
No, we're not obligated.
Correct?
Right,
And so we're just giving you,
we give you a list before we we don't want to go out and waste our time with somebody you won't accept. So we'll give you a list. Here's who we're going to call on. Here's a list of family offices. Here's a list of corporations, organizations. You'll look at that list and you'll say, you go down the list, never this one. Okay, fine, they come off the list. When we get then we go make all the original calls. When it's getting serious, they're going to want to sit with probably the mayor in the room and us, right? Because they're going to feel like they bought into the city. So we sit down with them, we negotiate the contract, we come up with the terms. Then you have to accept it. Because the signatory on the contract is the buying entity, the sponsor, and the city. It's not us.
well, I would say you need to have that presentation to each one of us, because we all have the same vote. And so because of sunshine laws, either you make that presentation here in public, which is wonderful, or it's each one of us. Because I think we all need the same information. You know what I mean, at the same time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I make a motion then to approve agenda item 10.1.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nay? No nays.
All right, thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Get working.
I am.
Hope your back's better.
I didn't expect to have surgery on it, but
Yeah. It's no fun. I've been there.
it's not.
All right, 10.2.
Approve some supplemental work order 1 to Hazen and Sawyer of Tampa, Florida for the Marshall Street and Northeast Water Reclamation Facility digester covers evaluation repairs project.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Brown, I'm the engineering manager for the Public Utilities Department. The takeaway from Monday was I think you were concerned about the money, and so I've modified my presentation a little bit from how I gave it to you on Monday. This project began because methane gas was leaking from the Marshall Street digester. Repairs to the digester are now complete, and the next step is to put it back into service. The reason for this supplemental is because when the digester began leaking biogas, it was sealed. So we couldn't see inside to determine what needed to be repaired. And so I'd like to put this photo up, and it might help everybody understand. And so this is a very old photo, so don't mind the point was to give you sort of a scale of, this is the digester that we're talking about here. This photo is so old, this digester has actually been demolished. It doesn't even exist anymore. And so this is what we're talking about. And so basically, this thing's about 100-foot diameter, maybe about 25 feet tall, And so we were essentially tasked with trying to estimate how much effort it would take to fix what's inside that digester without being able to look inside the digester. So the purpose of this item is to add additional budget. That $180,000 has been expended, and so we need additional budget for the consultant to complete the project. And this includes assisting the city in getting the digester back into service and preparing a final report. I hope that answered some of your questions, but I'm happy to respond to any more.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Councilmember Albrecht.
So I took a tour of that with, it
Ryan.
was very interesting to see how all that stuff worked, and I know we've been talking about this several times on this digester. The cracks in the ceiling that you had to deal with. What does a new digester cost if you had to build one from scratch?
I wouldn't venture a guess. I'm not sure if Mr. Gardner might be able to. I mean, it's many millions of dollars, I would assume, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Other questions? Councilmember Shea.
It's not a question, but rather a comment. I was the one that actually asked to be pulled out of consent. I had a lot of questions and I needed a lot of clarifications between my one-on-one with Assistant City Manager as well as David Margolis. I think I can support this, but I just had a lot of questions around that whole consulting. Like, why is it taking 2 years to consult for something that happened in January of '21? But after my conversations, I feel comfortable to proceed.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.2? You can fill it out after Mohammed.
All right, thank you. Mohammed Abdul Rahim, 1028 North Madison Avenue. Since this is my neighborhood, I really would like to know, have there been any damage to the air, to our community because of the leakage? That wasn't said. I didn't hear anything like that. It just said you noticed it, but has there been any, things that got out into the public that the public wasn't aware of? Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, can you fill out the card? Thanks. Do it for one, I have to do it for all.
I know. And you're so nice about that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, the methane that is escaping, it is flammable, it is combustible, and that was the concern. That's why we asked for the emergency declaration. We were able to address the leak, the methane leak, relatively quickly. That's we had to empty all the sludge contents out of it. And so to answer your question, sir, no, there wasn't anything released that was harmful to the community. I hope that answers everybody's concerns.
Sure. Vice Mayor.
I think, as I had said before, and I toured that plant too and saw all the bubbles but as I had said before, your department, it's a bunch of chemicals, and often it's single stream, or it's a single, what do you call that? When it's a single provider only, there's only one provider. Single source. But when there's not just a single source, I think it's important to make sure that you go out and make sure it's the best price, rather than an automatic increase from 69 to 159 or whatever. Or, if there's a sentence in there that this is a single source provider, or that you negotiated, ask for a lower price. I mean, it's just, because, again, your department has millions of dollars in things that people can't conceptualize and get at the, on the shelf.
Yeah, there was an item that was on consent earlier, and Mr. Gardner might be able to speak to it better than I can. And the reason that all those costs kept going up and they kept asking for money was due to this digester not being in operation. So, ideally, we wouldn't be spending all that additional money that you had to approve if this was up and running like it should be.
I think sometimes it would help if we have a sentence that just says single source or something, and so, or we chose to go out for an RFP or something. But that's it.
Other questions? Have a motion?
Move to approve item 10.2.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 10.3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Appoint an individual to the Pinellas Opportunity Council as the Clearwater representative with a term to expire February 2, 2028. Council members, in your agenda packs, you had applications for Janelle Griffith Donato, Kim McGee, and Eliseo Santana to consider. This would be a county regional board, and they would represent the city.
I mean, I found Ms. McGee impressive.
As did I.
Same.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
Motion to
Appoint?
appoint Ms. McGee to the Pinellas Opportunity Council.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.4.
Reappoint Andrew Park to the Community Development Advisory Board with a full term to expire February 28, 2027. Council members, Mr. Park is willing to be reappointed, and there are no other applicants on file.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to reappoint Andrew Park to the Community Development Advisory Board.
Second?
Anyone from the public to speak to this item? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.5.
Approve the 2023 state legislative priorities. Council members, as stated during the work session, these are items recommended by staff after working with the department directors. These are topics that they felt may be for consideration. That does not mean council cannot add or delete items. I do want to provide some clarification regarding the Clearwater Beach Marina request. That is not a legislative appropriation necessarily. Given that the project is not quite ready, I think it's going to be more of a competitive grants application. But if it meets the qualifications for legislative appropriation for the next session, we'll start working on it now so that we have everything ready for the following session.
So the appropes are necessary to have a House and a Senate representative by next Friday. And so the project is not far enough along to qualify for that. So it's got to go through the grant process. I also want to add seaborne transportation. I'm sure everybody saw the email correspondence that I had, and you were all copied on it. But once the park is open, it's going to be very important to get people to and from the beach. I think it's going to be a real draw for a lot of our visitors to go down to Coachman Park. And so I would like to add that to the agenda as well.
Absolutely.
I have one also.
Yes, Councilmember Tejeda.
If the council would agree, I would like to add support beach re-nourishment programs for our coastal areas. I'd like to add that under the environmental.
We also need to continue to push on that at the federal level to try to get the Army Corps of Engineers to be somewhat more flexible, because we're never going to get as many perpetual maintenance easements as they require, which is all of them. Even if one is missing, they will not go forward, and that's just untenable. We have at the TDC put aside some additional monies from capital dollars for beach re-nourishment, should we not have any federal monies that come through. Yes, Vice Mayor.
So I also, just 2 comments about the legislative priorities. I mean, I'm fine with them. I was at the Morningside Meadows HOA meeting last night, and along with a tree talk, there was also talk about Nursery Road. And I had communicated that we made a statement on Monday that we want to push the county for Nursery Road improvements. And if we're going to be advocating at the state level for any funding to come down for that kind of infrastructure, the people there wanted to be notified. And, perhaps these lobbyists that we pay, I forget how much do we pay? Is it Dean Mead a year about?
Dean Mead, 75 a year, I think. 75.
$75,000 a year? Okay. I would like, I'd like to know what we get for $75,000 a year. I mean, I have their contract, but I think if they could develop some talking points or bullets related to short-term rentals, to speak to the woman here today that's super frustrated about our limitations with short-term rentals, as well as trees or infrastructure funding. I think that would be good. If we have like 5 or 6 hot topics that we know our residents really care about, housing is one, and fully funding housing. If Dean Mead could come up with those kinds of handouts that we could give to residents when they call and say, look, you can use this to craft a letter.
I think that's a conversation council needs to have, because Dean Mead advocates for the city, not for residents. And a lot of the things that you're gonna run into is kind of like the short-term rental, where the city has an ordinance where we are considered, we're allowed to, and not every city has that. And so you have residents who want the ability to rent out their properties. And so I think that's something that council as a group needs to have, that conversation as to what they want the state lobbyists or any of our lobbyists to do, particularly because at the end of this year, their contract will be up and they will be up for renewal, and an RFP will go out. And I think what you're asking for isn't necessarily encompassed in the current contract. They advocate for us, not necessarily creating. I think that's something that staff can do. If that is what council wants us to do, I can work with public communications to get that kind of information out in terms of, if you support short-term rentals, and then do a bullet that way. But that's really not our lobbyists. That's not why we contact them. It's not within their scope of their contract.
But, I mean, I get that they're up there representing us as the city, but we're our residents. I mean, we're here for our residents. You know what I mean?
Understand that, but
and I know we have residents that are landlords and want to rent, and then we have residents that don't want obnoxious Airbnbs. Yeah.
It's a complicated, it's a complicated and nuanced issue. And so if that is what council wants, I think it needs to be a consensus of council.
Sure.
It can't be
Just one.
just one.
I know. I think we're in agreement about more money for housing, right? I mean,
Well, it's on our agenda.
yeah, right, okay,
I
yeah,
mean, everything that's on here we're agreeing to.
yeah. I just, maybe for the next contract, I think we need to engage our residents in advocacy at the state level and make it easier for them. And if we're paying Dean Mead, I would hope that they could help us.
I think that's actually something that's really, well, I don't know if it is, but that's something that council can discuss in terms of the neighborhood services. That's an engagement piece that could engage the residents. But that, again, that would be a conversation of council to decide.
Okay,
I mean, really, what I want from the state is for them to leave us alone.
yeah.
More than anything. But anyone from the public like to speak to item 10.5? Have a motion? What?
Motion to approve agenda item 10.5. I think it's me.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 10.6.
Provide direction to and appoint the Clearwater Charter Review Committee. Council members, as required by charter, no less than 10 members may be appointed to the Charter Review Committee. There are 14 applicants for your consideration. One individual, Travis, Mr. Travis, he had submitted an application this morning and actually submitted an email, and I shared that with council this morning, where he had submitted an application for the Airpark Advisory Board, but wanted consideration for that application to be considered.
Okay. Previously, this was kind of like a NFL draft, where each council member got two draft picks. And then if we went beyond the required 10, then it would be through consensus. I don't know what your all's, interest is. There's usually, I beg your pardon?
I like that format.
So we can do that if you want. And we also need to talk a little bit, I think, tonight about some of the things that we want them to look into. I think they're going to look at many of the normal things that we always, hear, which is, districts and how often the charter review gets reviewed. I think we review ours too often. For those watching at home, this is our Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't get changed very often. And we only are supposed to look at every 5 years, but because of our election cycle, we look at every 4 years and pretty much plow the same ground every single time. And that's not bad, it's just, I think it's unnecessary. Tampa, for instance, looks at their charter every 10 years. So I know they'll probably talk about districting, talk about expansion of the council, which frankly I don't agree with. I think more council members is not necessarily better. I don't know that they'll talk about strong mayor. It's always been talked about previously, but we had the referendum recently. They'll probably talk about salaries and other benefits for the council members. So, yes, ma'am.
Since there's 14 and we generally have about 12 or so, do you,
In the past, we've had 13, but the charter says no less than 10. I asked that it be an odd number, so if you're going to go with 10, then I would add 11.
but, so not all 14, because that's an even number?
I would prefer an odd number in terms of voting. It makes it a lot easier.
How often are they all there? Because the meetings I attended the last go-around, I think it was rare that they were all there.
Sometimes it's hard to say, so it really...
So maintaining an odd number isn't necessarily at every...
No, you could very easily end up with an even number.
Yeah. And then, do we often have one drop out?
Not necessarily. Sometimes we do. We had one year where I think we did have one drop out, but it just depends on the group.
And then I have a question too about, how often has a council accepted the recommendation of the charter review?
I would have to check in terms of the recommendations and moving it to the
To a
ballot.
voter?
I'll have to check. I don't know. They always accept the report. There is a report that they submit, but in terms of how many go...
On the ballot? I don't, yeah.
Very, very seldom
Exactly.
does the council not put on the ballot what the charter review comes back with.
Really? They didn't put any on last time?
Is that right?
Last one I did not.
Well, when I was around, we put them all.
That's great. Well, that makes this one a little more powerful. I mean, because, that was frustrating to meet all that time, and then it was like, thank you very much, no. Yeah.
I don't remember an item that we didn't put on, but there may have been.
I can check and report back to you.
I spoke to several of former members just today, and that was the general consensus. I'd love to do it again, but I didn't feel like I was heard last time.
Yeah.
None of our recommendations were considered.
Right.
That message was repeated to me 3 times today alone. Yeah. But
Well,
maybe
he's the
that's
only one that was here. So, just kidding. Well, not really, but
I'm thinking,
I can remember the business task force that you put together. They didn't really accept a lot of those
no, they didn't.
either.
oh, that's right, you were here.
He was on the
Yes,
task.
That's
it
right,
was,
you didn't
yeah.
accept them. Yeah.
No,
Took the low-hanging fruit. I left when you guys,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, usually that's what happens. It's always the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It's never really a controversial thing, because the whole salary thing is right before an election year. I mean, nobody, you know what I mean? So you almost have to put it out away from affecting anybody that's sitting here, or it's never going to get passed.
It depends.
Nobody's going to say, I want a raise in salary.
I'm willing to
going
take
in.
the risk.
I know you are. And I understand, because we talked about it too in 2015 when I was on the charter review. It makes sense for a lot of reasons, but
But David,
here we are today.
You're on your last 4 years, so now you can have the courage to vote for it. I have it. I take the risk, so
Yeah.
this is the year. If it's gonna happen, it's gotta happen now.
I think if we can have a lively debate and discuss all of it, that's as much as they, the charter review can really hope for.
Well, they
I don't
can
think we
vote for
should
it on the
dismiss
ballot.
anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So is there anything specifically before we go into the actual numbers that anyone would like specifically looked at?
I would like to have have it looked at that we have annual measurable goals for the city attorney and city manager, and that those annual measurable goals are tied to a strategic plan, and that we have a strategic plan that we, as a council, address early in the fiscal year, or the, calendar year? Yes, fiscal year, that gives direction to staff about what our priorities are for that year, that are, again, tied to that strategic plan. So as we talked about the strategic plan, last year, the idea is we have a strategic plan that we craft that's for 5 years or so. And then every year we look at that strategic plan and we decide which areas are we going to focus on with our budget and our projects and priorities. And then we give clear direction to departments about those are the things we're going to focus on, and then they take their money and make those things happen. And the city manager then is tied towards, would set some goals, and city attorney, related to what those priorities are that year. And then we march through them and we make progress and we stay focused, and the departments know, what our priorities are for that year, and we give direction. I think that's real important for efficiency and clarity, and I think it should be part of the charter.
That sounds like a recommendation to the charter. And the committee.
See, I don't think that should be in the charter.
Well,
Pretty deep.
I think it should be discussed. I think it could be
That's fine,
discussed, yeah.
But that's not something I believe should be in the charter. I think if you want to put it in council rules, that's a more appropriate place. But I don't think that that's something that should be in the city charter, personally. I mean, I have some issues with attendance, other than for extenuating health issues. I mean, some of the attendance issues for council members. This is not at you, okay? Health doesn't, but for other reasons. I mean, I couldn't imagine somebody failing to go to 6 consecutive meetings. I mean, I think that's...
So tighten it up?
I think tightening that up for something other than health. I mean, I'd be appalled if somebody missed 6 straight meetings. They can't do the work, obviously. So things like that, I would like to have them look at.
So just for clarification so far, for providing direction, there's consensus regarding looking at annual measurable goals for the city manager and city attorney, including that, and the attendance of council, tightening it up. I just want to make sure there's consensus that that's the direction you want the charter review committee to review.
Let's take it one at a time.
Okay.
So, I understand the desire to do the measurable goals. I think it ought to be in council rules, not in the charter, personally. So I don't support that. I mean, the charter review committee can look at whatever they want. But if that's something that comes back, I probably will not support it.
Well, do we have to vote on which ones we want them to look at? I mean, or...
You don't have to vote.
Okay.
Typically, it's a consensus of the group, but if a vote is needed, then that's your pleasure.
We don't ever limit what they can talk about. And I
Well,
think
these
they
are
do talk
specific
about
areas
that.
that you want the committee to consider. So they're going to review the entire charter section by section, but these are areas that the council, as a collegial body, has decided we want you to take some extra time to look and consider.
So how does everyone feel about that?
Well, this is something that you've brought up in meetings before, and I think we can just agree on that here on the council without having to put it in the charter. We should be able to reach consensus on that, I would think.
I think it should be part of governing documents for all charter, or all councils, that we have a strategic plan that guides our spending and direction, and that we touch base on it every year, as well as annual measurable goals of the two highest paid members in our organization.
Well, I'm okay with it being talked about.
So that's two, two in favor.
I just don't know if it belongs in the charter. But they're gonna end up talking about whatever they want, but I'm not requesting that from the charter.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. I think that we could put it in our rules. Charters, a lot of things can go in the charter, and a lot of changes can be made, because a lot of stuff in the charter goes back from when Clearwater was, first formed. A lot of that stuff doesn't, they look at that and see what they can take out of the charter that doesn't apply anymore. That's one of the things that they look at. But
I think it's interesting that there's different rules. Mr. Margolis isn't bothered by them, but that there's different rules for termination of the manager versus the attorney. So all it takes is a majority, one meeting for the attorney, and he's hits the bricks.
That doesn't seem fair. Only one?
His response was, if 3 council members don't want me, I don't want to be here. Is that fair?
I don't know that I quite phrased it that way. But I did say that I don't see any problem with, philosophically, with a city manager having a little bit more job security and job protection than the city attorney. First of all, when you dismiss a city manager, it creates a little bit more of a period of instability, I think, than a city attorney. And second, there's a higher probability in any commissioner manager form of government that a city manager is going to, fall victim to a, political misunderstanding or things like that, and potentially could be dismissed under questionable circumstances. Whereas a city attorney, for that to happen to me, in all likelihood, would either be an act of serious misconduct or serious incompetence, or it could just be a situation where one day we have a very different council than the council I have today, and one day we may have very different elected officials than each of you. And because that relationship that we share individually is so important, if I have a council one day that's so different than the council that's up here, and if that council doesn't connect with me, or that I don't connect with them, or that we don't have that level of trust together, I probably shouldn't be their city attorney. So personally, I don't find anything offensive about that. So.
The other thing we talked about, and I asked Mr. Margolis, that I thought maybe should enter, and I want to communicate this because I think it's worthy of a discussion. With Mr. Jennings' departure, in my opinion, it was a little messier than I would have liked. And I frankly, and Mr. Margolis believes we could deal with this in a contract, but when we had 3 council members that were in favor of termination, I did not think it was great to have the manager still being the manager for 2 meetings. And that person even to be able to put an acting city manager in place. In my opinion, at that point, we should be allowed to put somebody on paid leave until the next vote, and that the council choose who they want as their acting city manager. Now, that's something that in a future contract, if Mr. Margolis, I've got to rely on you as an attorney to guide me on that, but that's something I would want in a contract, because I think it was an unfortunate 3 weeks.
I agree.
So, Mr. Margolis?
Yeah, I agree that it was an unfortunate 3 weeks, and I don't want to speak for Ms. Blair, but I think she probably felt the same way. It was challenging on staff, on all of us, and on the council, and on the public. So I would say that I'm very comfortable having an employment agreement with our next permanent city manager in which it says that If there is a 3-2 vote to terminate, which would be on first reading based on our current city charter, then the city manager will be placed on paid administrative leave until that next meeting. However, the current city charter does not provide a mechanism for the council to make an appointment of an acting city manager. So I would say that we can accomplish most of it through an employment agreement by requiring the manager to be on paid admin leave between that interim period. However, it would be the manager who is going on leave who would appoint an acting city manager. One option for the council is for the employment agreement to say that the manager must appoint an acting city manager from among certain designated officials. For example, if council would like to say that the manager must appoint the acting person from one of the ACMs, to give an example, that would confine the decision somewhat. And I think that would probably accomplish the stability goal, or at least the vast majority of it. However, if it's important to council for you to choose the acting city manager during that 2 or 3 week period, that would require a charter amendment. So I do believe we could accomplish most of that goal through an employment agreement, but because the city charter currently empowers the manager to decide who is acting in the manager's absence, I don't believe the council can appoint an acting city manager while there is technically still a city manager. That's not how the charter is currently structured. So there are limits to what can be accomplished in the charter, and so if council would like to have the ability in that 2 to 3 week period to make the appointment, that would require a charter amendment.
So if there is a 3-2 vote, and then the city manager gets on administrative leave, is there a trigger that forces him to, at that point, that he must appoint a interim?
Right now, there is not. However, my suggestion to the council would be that the next manager's agreement would make that a condition of his or her employment agreement. What I would likely suggest is, because any obligation is only as strong as the remedies behind it, and so it would likely be tied to severance. I would likely draft the contract in a way that makes it a condition of receiving severance, so that if a manager failed to or refused to make an appointment of an acting city manager who's appropriate during that 2 to 3 week period, then the manager would forfeit their severance. And that would be a pretty, major financial reason to get it done. So yeah, the likelihood of someone leaving that amount of money on the table just to be petulant for 2 weeks is slim. So.
Okay.
I don't know how you all feel about that, but
I think, yeah.
Vice Mayor?
I had, during the last charter review, I was not on the council, but I attended the Charter Review Committee meetings. I wasn't on the Charter Review Committee. But one of the things I spoke on and advocated for, along with annual measurable goals, was a requirement that in the agendas, that the agenda items, the council would research and report the environmental impact of all decisions with the goal of reducing our energy consumption, waste generation, and production of greenhouse gases. And, you can tell that that's kind of what I do with any agenda item that we have. It's like, what's the environmental impact here? Can we get, are we limiting gas at the fire station, or are we going to have solar and things like that? And I think it's important with our adoption of Green Print 2.0 that for every agenda item, if, for example, if the police department is ordering new vehicles and they've explored getting hybrids or EVs, and they're going to report that, if we purchase EVs, it's going to be this much, this price, but our carbon offset is this, and do we want to, spend the money that way? And so it's for agenda items that relate to pollution, the environment, reducing carbon emissions. And I just think that's good practice. I think, often it comes out anyway in a report, but to be intentional about it is good. So I pushed for that. It was before you. you know, 3 years ago, before that council, among some other ones. And there was a lot of wordsmithing with that the Charter Review spent on that. Kelly, who's in the audience, was on that Charter Review and talked about that as well as the annual measurable goals. So, you know, that Charter Review Committee took that stuff very seriously. So I just want to, since I advocated strongly for it 3 years ago, now I'm in a different vantage point. I think it's important to consider going forward. I don't know if I have consensus up here.
I'm just trying to see how that's going to be implemented.
It just means when we get an agenda item, there's some acknowledgement of the environmental impact of that decision. And so it's not going to be for, you know, zoning, you know, changes or annexations or things like that. But it would be for construction decisions on City Hall or on new buildings, on fleet purchases, all that stuff.
So the responsibility would be by the person presenting
Yeah,
the agenda item?
yeah, just to have that information as part of our judgment when we make a decision up here. And yeah. The other, there's another thing I was thinking of today when, what was I doing with the agenda? And, oh no, it was, it was an invite to an event. It's like, you know, hey, the council's been invited to this event, a table's been purchased, do you want to go? And I think it's important, and this, you know, I don't think it's policy, maybe it's just operation, that when we get that information, that email, it should include, and the city has contributed $400 for this table or something like that out of this fund. I think there needs to be a real sense of knowledge of what money is going where, from where. You know what I mean? Rather than, sure, I'll go to that event and I'll put it on my calendar. But it's like, well, what's the value of that ticket and what account is it coming out of in my city? You know? Because I think we're kind of oblivious as people who get invited to those things.
I'm not oblivious. I pay for them all myself.
Yeah, I pay for most of mine.
So, but that being said, I don't think that needs to be in the charter.
No, but
We're getting off on
yeah,
kind
I'm
of
sorry, a little best practices.
tangent.
But about transparency, about money and saving money and, yeah.
All right, why don't we pick the members? I've written them down,
Start with your left.
so
You don't want to go with all 14 because it's close to? Okay.
Councilmember Albritton.
Okay, well, I wanted to, I have two
Just
people.
give me one.
Give you one?
I'm going to go in
It's a
rotation.
draft.
Yeah,
Oh, a draft, okay. Well, I wanted to
gotta love.
tell you that
Fantasy
Ryan
Charter
Cotton, I want full disclosure here, is my son-in-law. And he wants to be involved more actively in giving back to his community. He's a fire captain in Leelman, but he lives in Clearwater. He's been living in Clearwater all along. So I'd like to bring his name up, Ryan Cotton.
There's no issues with that, David.
I don't have any concern with that at all. I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. Vice Mayor.
Gladys Andrews?
Mike Reardon.
Karen Cunningham.
And I will take Trish Rodriguez. I didn't go in order.
Kathy Milam.
Vice Mayor.
Bill Johnson?
Mr. Bunker.
Nathan Hightower.
Kathy Milan. How many do we have?
Kathy Milam's already
He's
on.
already taken.
She was drafted in the first round.
I'm writing it on the other side. Okay.
Trade for a player to be named later.
Corey Chase.
Okay.
Trying to write it down here.
Jonathan Wade.
Travis Norton.
Oh wait, that was two
That's-
for each,
no,
so
That's it.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, 4,
I think,
1, 2, 3,
9, 10.
4,
Yeah,
5,
that's
6,
10.
7, 8, 9.
But you want an odd number.
So we need the 11th.
I think Chris Michalak would be good.
Any other people? I take it
Wait.
Travis Norton down there from,
Do we have to, I'm sorry, I
I have Gladys Andrews.
Yeah.
Corey Chase, Ryan Cotton, Karen Cunningham, Nathan Hightower, Bill Johnson, Kathy Milam, Mike Reardon, Trish Rodriguez, and Jonathan Wade.
Chelsea Gerd?
yeah.
Did you get that?
I like Chelsea.
11.
I like Chelsea.
So Chelsea or Chris, or what are we at? We're 11?
We're 11.
We're looking for the 11th.
So we're 2 for Chelsea.
I thought we were at 11.
No,
no, we're not at 11. I think you guys are discussing 11.
we're
Yeah.
discussing the 11th.
Oh,
So right now for the 11th, I don't hear consensus, but these are the names that are being discussed. Ms. Michalek, Mr. Norton, and Ms. Gerd.
I like the two ladies. Chelsea or Chris.
I would like Chelsea or Travis Norton.
Chelsea for me.
Councilmember Albritton?
well, I like Travis, but
I can support Travis.
So 3 Travis.
Travis was our new entry.
Yes.
Well, we had 3 for Chelsea, right?
And 3 for Travis, right?
I've got 2 for Travis and 3 for Chelsea so far.
No, it was Councilmember Teixeira said Chelsea or Travis.
I said either or.
Either.
Councilmember Albritton said Travis, and I said I could support Travis. So,
So, what?
there were 3 people that said that, and there were also 3 people that said Chelsea.
Right.
You, Councilmember Teixeira, and was it you?
I could do Chelsea or Chris.
So we're battling over which one of those then?
Yeah, which one of those 2?
Then I'll choose Travis. Let's choose between the 2.
And then it's settled.
Okay. There's your 11. Thank you all for serving. All right. Mr. Margolis, anything else?
Direction for the charter review?
I beg your pardon?
Direction, you said that you were going to go back to it, so
Is this a one and done? I mean, when are they going to start their meetings? Can we,
as soon as this is, tomorrow, I will start drafting an email so I can contact them to see about their availability. And Mr. Margolis and I will start meeting with them. Typically, we meet twice every 2 weeks, so twice a month we'll be meeting with them, so it's,
and we're to have no contact with them while they're meeting? Members of the charter review?
I'm gonna let Mr. Margolis answer.
I don't see any legal problem with one member of council reaching out to one member of the Charter Review Commission. However, the members of the Charter Review Commission will have to be advised, and the clerk and I will advise them, that they cannot communicate with each other relating to this business. So,
Okay.
but yeah, if there's a particular member of the commission that you individually would like to reach out to, one-on-one, I don't see a problem with that.
And he's your son-in-law. You're going to be talking to him, I would think.
yep.
How do you feel about council members coming to the charter review meetings?
Well, they are open to the public, but I would not recommend it. I mean, really, it can come across, in my experience, pretty heavy-handed to have council kind of hawkishly on top of them. I think it's best to let them breathe. Candidly, I'm thinking about even how can I best support our citizens who are serving on, and it certainly is a large group, as well as a very diverse group in terms of perspectives. I've gotten some perspective from the clerk, as well as even from Ms. Aiken about how these have gone in the past. And so what I envision my role to be is actually quite limited, which is more to just make sure that the recommendations that come out of the Charter Review Commission are consistent with state law, federal law, and make sure we don't do things that are illegal, so we don't end up with egg on our face. But beyond that, I don't picture myself weighing in on the policy wisdom of any of those things. That's totally, what you've appointed them to do.
And I could tell you that it's going to be awkward if we go sit in there and listen, because they're going to be talking about us and the way we do things, so.
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't go as a
That's not even
council
good.
member.
I asked David that question because I know that's the fact. The only time I've ever gone to him is previously, even when I wasn't mayor, they've asked me to come and talk to him every single time they've had one. Usually to talk about strong mayor and city manager council form of government. So I've done that 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's at their request. They may not care. Is there anything that you would like them specifically to discuss? I already brought up things that I know they're probably going to talk about, and my only concern was that I'd like them to look at is attendance of council members, and then also this issue with, if we have the first step in a termination for a city manager. I would like that resolved.
And
I don't think I'm ever going to live through that again. I think that's a gift to, some future council that they don't have to go through what I think we went through.
Yeah. Also, I know we've talked about it before, but the whole thing of when we have our charter review, how often? Should it be 8 years, every other cycle, maybe? I don't know really why we didn't we change this several years ago to fall on a different year?
It didn't
I thought
pass.
maybe on the mayor, what was it?
Not pass. Every other question on the ballot passed except changing the time frame. And I think the last time it was 6 years, and we couldn't even get that.
Okay. Well,
I'll just say, having dealt with these issues in different cities, my experience has been that voters tend to prefer more frequent reviews. I think voters often feel that more frequent reviews just give more opportunities and more power to citizens. However, in this particular context, I'm not sure that's true. As the clerk and I discussed the other day, citizens always have the power of ballot initiatives. And so there's already a statutory process that has nothing to do with Charter Review Commission, is not dependent upon, the council, is not dependent upon them getting appointed to this commission. Citizens already have that right in Florida, but I think there is a feeling from many voters, and I've seen it in multiple jurisdictions, that more frequent types of commission meetings like those tends to be popular. So just for what that's worth.
But those ballot initiatives, that is not a low bar.
No.
To get it on the ballot.
And that's my point. It's because there is already a right that's provided that's relatively easy to get things on the ballot. I don't know that the frequent Charter Review Commission necessarily advances any additional goals, but I think people often feel like it does. And so just my experience has been that people are very hesitant to make less frequent Charter Review Commissions, and we've seen this happen in many cities because people feel like it provides additional avenues for them to amend the charter. That's been what I have observed.
Yeah, but I don't think it is a low bar is kind of my point. Doesn't it take 10% of the registered voters to sign a petition?
It is.
Yes, there's a process. And
That's
keep
a
in
lot
mind,
of people. For those of us that have to get signature cards to get on the ballot here, we have a low bar for that, which is only 250. What do we have, 67,000 registered voters, roughly? 6,700 signatures is not a low.
Council can always call a charter review whenever,
Yeah.
so you don't have to follow that schedule. So if there was a need to have it 2 years from now, for whatever reason, council can call it.
So are we not giving, consensus to city manager and city attorney having annual measurable goals, and I would also add a uniform evaluation form for their annual evaluation? Because I'll tell you, of all the conversations I have had on front porches when I was running and said, well, did you know that our city manager and city attorney don't have required standardized annual evaluations tied to any goals? They're like, what? Really? Yeah, we can just say they're doing a good job. We can write a paragraph. We can check a box, but it's all, whatever we want. We can go into a room and say, you're doing a great job, and that's about it. And that's unacceptable. And I think our voters, would agree. And I think it should be part of the charter.
A lot of voters don't know that we have weekly meetings with both the city manager and city attorney that we just don't see them once or twice a year. And we see them at meetings.
But it's about, some transparency and accountability there with just, knowing what how are we evaluating people? Because that's what we do with everybody else in the city. They have goals and they get written evaluations.
I'm fine with going to a standard evaluation form. I'm a little disappointed I put work into one, and if it wasn't good, then come give me feedback on how to change it. But I got nothing.
Well, we have to discuss up here.
Well, I gave it to all of you.
I have it. I have feedback. Part of, after
But
we...
you even said, I'm not going to use this.
Well,
so I was curious,
but
what are you going to use?
I didn't want to use it because it wasn't fair to Mr. Margolis to use a form he didn't see at the beginning of his tenure. If I'm going to be evaluated at the end of my year, I'd like to know from the beginning how I'm going to be evaluated. That's why I didn't do it. He got a narrative.
Well, Mr. Margolis approved the evaluation sheet that I gave him.
That's fine. But to me, I would like to know when I start a job what the expectations are. How am I going to be evaluated?
Well, he's already started, so now
I know, and I brought this up a few weeks ago. Like, we need to have a discussion here. What are his annual goals? He's already suggested some. And can we agree on evaluation format that we're all going to use in October? And we haven't had that discussion yet.
So you want the charter committee to
Require that we have that, that's all, to make it standardized. Consider.
You don't tell them what to decide.
Talk about it.
What to look at.
Yeah.
But you want them to look at a standardized evaluation for both.
Right.
Which I agree with. But I think that the actual form.
No, it's not their business to create it. They just say that we have it.
And I used yours, except for one question. I added one, that's all. But I thought it was great help. Just on record.
But really, we need to make time for these really important discussions. And we can all come to the table with a form, or we can start with yours and shape it and, go forward. But it's
not about pride of ownership.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that we didn't have one
Right.
that was worth anything, in my opinion,
Right.
and went out and got it. And if you want to change it, fine. But I don't support putting this in the charter. It's just not the right place.
I would beg to differ that it is.
Okay.
That it's governance. It's governance. Yeah.
We don't have all the governance in our charter.
I know. But this is super important.
Okay, so is, fiscal responsibility and return on investment and payback periods. I think all those are important, but I'm not putting them in the charter. There's things that should be in the charter, and there's things that should be in council rules, and there's things that should be agreed upon by the council. What you care about may not be what a future council cares about, and you're going to put it in the charter, which then requires the citizens to rescind.
To vote on it. And if it's important to them, then that's how we govern. Again, and it's a recommendation of the Charter Review Committee that comes before us, and if you don't like it, then if you have 3 votes, then down it goes, I'm just
Well,
asking it for it to be considered.
I want to be on the front end, though, of finding things that we all agree they should talk about so that when things come back, we're not going to shoot them down, and then the 11 people come back and say, well, that was a waste of time. So if there's something that I know I'm going to shoot down
Okay.
after they bring it back, at least I am, because it's not that it's a bad idea, it's in the wrong place. I mean, understand that what we do in the charter obligates everybody from here until it is rescinded. And we know that changing things in the charter are extraordinarily difficult. I mean, look at how often it meets and we can't ever get that passed. I mean, we do not, there's a reason that it's difficult to amend the Constitution. The Founding Fathers did that on purpose. I think it was wise. I don't know.
I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but you know, having a strategic plan, that you have annual goals tied to a strategic plan, is not something that I would think any other council would be like, oh my God, what were they thinking? They want to tie goals to a strategic plan, and they require a written uniform evaluation for their city manager and city attorney? Oh my gosh, we got to get rid of that. I mean, I just don't see it. Yeah.
Nobody wants a strategic plan up here more than I do.
Yeah,
And had we gone with somebody initially, we would have had it a year and a half ago. But because I knew him, we shot him down. And now we're going to be on our 4th iteration. So where's that gotten us? Other things that anyone wants? Okay. Do we need to vote on those members? Would you like that?
No, I think
To
I'm good with
memorialize it?
consensus if everybody
Okay.
is, and I think on the last one, I think we're good. So,
Anything else, Mr. Margolis?
Not at this time.
You have to think about it there for a second.
Ms. Boyer?
No, I was going to mention the recycling, but Mayor, you have already articulated that, so I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Closing comments, I'll start from my left.
Okay, so I've used my closing comments to always shine a light on residents that I feel leave a positive footprint behind them. And today I want to dedicate it to Alan James Stowell, who passed away January 14th. He was such a wonderful man, and I so admired him because he was engaged. What he believed in, he acted on. He had many passions, music, was very politically involved, very civic-minded, and I'm going to miss him a lot. And I think Clearwater lost somebody, and he's going to be very, very much missed. I'm going to miss the twinkle in his eyes when his eyes would twinkle right before he would say something that he knew was going to rile me up. And he would say the darndest things, but as soon as he would smile and twinkle, everything was good. Like, I remember him saying, I hate the color of your yard signs. But then he would smile and twinkle, his eyes would be... Anyway, I'm going to miss him, and I think it's a great loss to our city. I just wanted to shine a light on this gentleman.
Councilmember Bunker.
I had prepared a tight 3 minutes on Scientology, and I'm going to spare you that. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry I wasn't here for the work session, but I was watching along through the miracle of YouTube, and I really appreciated the presentations, especially on the tree removals, and the discussions that were had, and hearing the passionate voices of all the people who came here tonight to speak out. I certainly understand their passion and their concerns, and I was very happy to hear on Monday that we were putting this long pause and now a stop to the program for now to reevaluate it. I don't see how we can get to the position where a program could go on where we can put a tag on a tree and tell the owner, you've got 48 hours and the tree's coming down, without saying, well, here's why it's coming down, and here's the arbitration process you can start to slow that down and find some way to come to an acceptable conclusion here. So anyway, I just wanted to, I didn't have a chance to add anything on Monday, didn't have a chance to speak at all tonight, so I wanted to share some of those concerns, and I'd like to, in this case and in the recycling situation, there were people earlier in the process who should have spotted that, oh, there's something wrong here. Why didn't that information get up to us? And I'm concerned that there's not enough trust or a whistleblower process for people to be able to feel free to say, listen, we should be looking at this before we start, putting those notices on doors. Anyway, that's all I had on my mind.
Glad you're feeling better. How was the sound?
The sound?
On the work session?
Oh, it was fine.
Okay.
It was good.
Vice Mayor.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who showed up and spoke about what was important to them, and that's how we work together and learn and make improvements. And I hope everyone has a good weekend.
Councilmember Albrecht.
I just want to mention something about Alan Stowell myself. He was a good-hearted man. He gave a lot back. In fact, he was very involved with the whole I guess the US 19 corridor code change, because he owned, since the late 50s, he started assembling land together on Tampa Bay. Beautiful land that's on a bluff there, and he kind of died suddenly. So his celebration of life is going to be Saturday at 1 o'clock. The little chapel that used to be the only church in Bayview, but on Bayview Lane. If anybody knew Alan and wants to show up, I'm sure they'll be received there. And I wanted to mention to Bunker that I'm glad you're feeling better and you're here. We really missed you. There's definitely a void here when you're not here. And I want to thank everybody that came out tonight and were passionate about the cause and decided that they needed to come talk to us about that passion, whether it be recycling or the tree thing. We do listen and we do understand up here, and I do appreciate that. It shows that we've got a very good city, and I think this process works really well because we're here to listen to you and do the best we can to resolve it. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, I would agree that it works. It's not always perfect, but when we see a mistake, then we try to rectify it. And I failed tonight to thank Mr. Halios. This was his last meeting, and I'm sorry that he scooted out and I didn't get a chance to recognize him as our Parks and Rec Director. We wish him the very best as he moves on to the private sector. Certainly want to send out our prayers to the Stowell family, and also to David Yamada, who was the general manager of the Wyndham Grand, a really great guy in our community, gave back, was passionate about Clearwater and our brand, and worked with all of the other innkeepers. You would think they're competitors, but they really are a strong network, and he will be missed. He was way too young. I also want to congratulate the Clearwater Free Clinic. They had a great Martinis and Matisse, and Ruth Eckerd Hall's annual dinner. Both had great results, and it's good to see those wonderful not-for-profits in our community. And I just want to commend Jennifer Poyer. I think she's doing a great job, and the staff. And we've had some issues that have been thrown in her lap, and I want to commend her. So keep it up. And with that, we are adjourned. God bless.